That's what really unlocked God for me. Finding a higher power, it was an actual relationship with something that could deliver me from this thing I could not do for myself, right? But my shape of God changed after God accessed my heart and enabled me to change, right?
You're listening to Find the Good News, episode 106, The Escape Pod, featuring James Hiatt, interim worship leader at University Methodist Church in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Find the Good News is produced by Parker Brand Creative Services, a branding agency that thinks sideways, pushes forward, and gets your brand up. See what else we do at parkerbrandup.com. It wasn't hard to come up with a proper reflection from my conversation with James Hiatt. James and I met online in overlapping territory, and it was clear from the very beginning that I'd discovered a spiritual brother. While our personal stories are very different, we have somehow found our way to a common road wide enough to share, and there's plenty of space for others. What was clear from the jump is that James has opened his heart to wisdom over and again, and in doing so, he has expanded the boundaries of what we assume to know. This conversation has fibers of rebellion and doubt, bound up with the nutriments of healing and hope. More than anything, James and I talk about Jesus, which acted as a much-needed inhalation of clean, fresh, rejuvenating spirit. James comes from a place of recovery that has been infused with a mystical perspective and understanding that fuels his passion for inclusivity. The truth is that it is a very rare and healing pleasure to speak so openly and freely with someone about Jesus, God, and the Christ. James showed me a face of Christ that I am so fondly attracted to, and that is the face of Christ that I see planted firmly in the world, out in the wild, with us, not separate from us. He reminds me of the high value of being with the people of the world, in the world, as they are, instead of preparing some grand escape from the worries and woes. It leavens my heart to be able to share this intimate visit with you. Now, it's time to lay aside theology and preconceived notions, prepare to have the temple raised and built anew, then press play on a little good news.
Wake up, it's morning, you're dreaming up a story. I can hear the way it's going, 'cause you're laughing in your sleep, on the path to your deliverance, and a holy wall of light pouring through your window.
Old news, bad news, fake news. Sometimes you just want to shut it all down and get no news at all. With Find the Good News, I aim to change that by focusing on good people doing good work. I visit with artists, educators, civic and spiritual leaders, musicians, business owners, students, volunteers, and everyday citizens who are using their creativity, resources, and talents to bring hope and happiness to their corner of the world. In each episode, I dig into the hearts and minds of my extraordinary guests. We have street-level conversations about relatable things going on in their lives. Discover the critical life experiences that shape them, the perspectives that drive them, and the fundamental beliefs that are anchoring them to a path of goodness. There's a lot of news in the world. My name is Oran Parker, and I'm going to find the good.
And I love you just as well.
I mean, I work at the church. I'm the interim worship leader.
Oh, okay.
And so we have, we started a Reconciling Ministries Sunday school class before COVID happened. That's, there's a big movement in the United Methodist Church that's for inclusivity. And then there's a big break, people trying to, they want to call it biblical, whatever, to not allow LGBTQ in leadership positions. Anyway, so we don't have our church wouldn't go for it. We couldn't have the whole church be a reconciling. There's a thing, a reconciling ministry, reconciling congregation.
Gotcha.
The whole church wouldn't go for that, but they allowed us to have a class.
I see. Okay.
We have a so it's not saying that the whole church affirms, but at least this class affirms.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Anyway, it's just
it's a foot in the water. I mean, it's ground gained. And you got to get it wherever you can get it. I mean, I don't always. Some people want to go into things like a bull in a china closet and just break the whole thing down. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately, actually, just rereading some
some of the letters of Gandhi and just into the really deep philosophy of nonviolence. And it was really not about destroying the enemy. It was about healing the enemy, and it's such a difficult thing to really wrap our minds around in this culture we're living in right now.
Yeah, that's exactly it, man. It's hard to include everyone and to include the people that wish to exclude people. How can you draw a circle big enough to keep in the ones that want to kick out the others,
Yeah.
But I'm the same way. Sometimes I think maybe we should just burn this whole thing down and start over.
I thought the same thing. Sure.
And I've done that in my life too. I was raised a Southern Baptist. I was saved when I was like 4 or 5 years old, like a little baby, a kid. My dad got saved, my sister got saved, and then I didn't want to burn in hell, so I got saved and got baptized as a little kid. And so until I made it to middle school, when I started thinking this is all, I became an atheist.
Really?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I got expelled from middle school. I had straight A's and I kept failing PE. Me and the PE coach didn't get along too good, and I got expelled. And that was all symptoms of spiritual, malady. I had, anyway, we ended up. I got sent off to Utah to a wilderness program to straighten out. Yeah,
that is fascinating. I didn't know any of this. I'm already just. It's a page turner for me. Okay, yeah. I want to hear more about this.
Well, I don't know if this is how we're going to get started, but anyway, we'll just get into it. So it was out there in the wilderness. We camped. It was 2 months of hiking.
2 months. Wow.
Yeah, we had a survival pack. It was a backpack wrapped in a tarp that you tied up with cordage, and we made fire with sticks. And
wow. Okay.
And I was first 2 weeks, I think I lost like 20 pounds. We're just eating rice and lentils and salt pork. On 1 day a week, we'd get some salty meat. Anyway, but out there in nature, I looked around and saw the majesty that is nature.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you know what? I don't think I got this right. There's got to be something.
Okay.
And so I came back and I dove straight in, full throttle Southern Baptist.
Yeah. So you're what, about 14 at this time?
I was 13. I was just turned 13 when I got expelled, and I believe that's right. And so I went from I'd heard you talk before about you wished you had some kind of tradition. I guess growing up you didn't have.
Yeah, well, honestly, I'm listening to your story, and I don't want to get too far off because I got questions already. I would love to dive into with you. Like, just that's how quick these things get started, man. I mean, I'm highly fascinated by stories of change. I mean, I'm sure you know that from just our interactions. Oh, yeah. I love stories of transformation. I mean, I'm hearing it already. You just never know what it's going to be for somebody. And yeah, I also, as a child, I want to skim through mine really quickly because I want to get back to you. But just in a nutshell, my dad.
Skim through yours really quickly. Go ahead.
Well, so my dad grew up Pentecostal, and my mom really grew up like non-denominational, like Church of Christ is what she called it. But my great-grandfather on my mom's side, he was Catholic, but he didn't really pass that down through our family, which is very odd because usually someone who is a devout Catholic is going to pass that down. But see, he didn't speak any English. He was one of the French Acadians. He was a baby, came over on the boat.
Oh, c'est tu parles français, oui?
Yeah, there you go. So none of that got really transferred to me. I didn't even really find out he was Catholic until I started going through my early awakening time period in my early 20s. And because I was scratching at the surface, I started discovering that. But what I came to find out, was that I was sort of a mutt because my aunt and uncle would take me to the Baptist church when I was a young kid up until probably my first year in high school, which was when I was baptized. And so there was a lot of religious information coming at me. But I'm going to be honest, the truth of the matter was I didn't think there was a lot of spiritual information coming at me. It was mostly just almost like warring factions. I had the Pentecostal arm, which my dad was given the scarlet letter of being called a backslider. I mean, his whole family, called him that constantly behind his back. As a child, I remember that word. I didn't know what it meant, but I remember the first time I said that I heard my aunt call my dad a backslider. My dad flipped out. I mean, and he really did. He like flipped out. It was a huge blow up. And so as a kid, I was like, there's something going on with this. Obviously, this break that my dad had with his faith. So it was just a lot of signals coming in, informing me from different directions. And I, too, as you stated, I spent a lot of time alone in the woods, in the forest. And being alone, I just had this feeling of in fact, I'll say it like this. I think I heard Jim Finley talk about it. Maybe it was Thomas Merton he was quoting, but he said, when two people pray, there's always a third that's there. And I guess I call that third, when I was in nature, there was another, not to sound like Yoda, there is another, but it was like,
no, man,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so it was imprinting on me outside of these religious signals. So when I did kind of have a breakdown, and whatever came in, whatever rushed in that void was that other. And so, yeah, I get this, these different things, these breakdowns, this cycle of change, going through all that. I mean, we all have to go through these different wandering paths that we go through to end up where we're at. So yeah, that's why I kind of say traditionalist, because I haven't really, I've kind of stopped looking for a home. It used to give me angst. I don't do that anymore. I think that once I let that go, and try to just feel at home wherever I may be, that was a big, huge awakening for me. Another eye opener. But I've always, probably like you, I feel like somewhere in my heart I advocate for those wanderers and wayfarers out there that don't have that home, because they're out in the wild, so to speak, and not every tradition is tailor made for whoever they are at that time.
Oh yeah, I think community is very important. I mean, that's
yeah.
And then that's what churches are. That's
right.
what I mean. And I'm a Christian because I was raised a Christian, right? I'm not. I'm also very interested in Buddhism and Taoism. So I do this a lot. I think I'm right. I think I'm right. And I have a corner on the truth,
right?
And you're close. At least growing up, that's how it was. It's like we take these apologetics courses, or it's not a course, just a discipleship training is what it was called, and we would learn how the Pentecostals are wrong, how the Buddhists are wrong, how these. And it's not to say that was that's how I received it, right? That's maybe not how it was.
Right, but that's sort of
and that's how I used it. I used that going. I don't know if it'd be combative against people, but when you're in a mindset that when we die, you get a choice to live forever in paradise or burn in hell.
Right.
You don't want anybody to burn in hell. And if you have the key to get out of hell, you want to give that to everybody that, everybody you can give it to. And so that worldview, or that, I understand it, that's not the one I have currently, but that I understand people who have that. I think it's great compassion. You don't want people, but at the same time, if you have a shape of God that looks like that, you might need to change, might have to reorient who God is to you.
Yeah, sure.
If he's this punisher, if he's this tormentor, great tormentor, kill his own son to pay himself for eternal life is. I don't know. That's another reason why I became atheist again,
Sure, you started trying to make that equation, and I get it, because I understand that. I mean, I still can't sit down and have that kind of, like the way you just phrased that, like if I write that down on paper, step 1, step 2, step 3, and this solves the problem, right? Like a math equation,
that's
a
problem,
ritual or a sacrificial offering. I mean, when I sit and do it that way, I can see why anyone who uses critical thinking and understanding or any of that stuff is going to look at that and go, well, I don't want anything to do with that because that doesn't make any sense to me. You know, as a human being that's taught to, let's just say, do generally good towards others, just generally with no religious belief on top of it. When you add that in, you're going, hang on a second, I don't know about this, because we're talking about bloodletting and sacrifice and fathers and sons, and it almost seems I can't think of the word, it's just escaping me, but it just seems like it's a corrosive, destructive type of relationship. It's not a dynamic that we would want with our parents.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, also, I just am drawn to this fact that we have such a great capacity for completely missing the point, right? I mean, if we and that's how I've read the Bible like that many times. I still miss the point many times.
Sure.
I'm not. I wish I was enlightened, and if you spend more than 5 minutes with me, you can tell. Oh yeah, this dude's got some places, somewhere to go. He's still got some work to do. So.
Well, I have a question, man. I
Sure.
mean, like I you said something that it's something I'm very fascinated about, and I didn't really think we were going to talk about this, so I'm glad you brought it up. You said you were baptized when you were 5 years old, 4 or 5?
Yeah, I can't remember, but that's about right.
So let me ask you a question about that, because I was baptized as a teenager, and I want to share this with you because I remember. I was in the Baptist church, so you're going to know this experience for sure, the altar call, right? I mean,
yeah, that's it.
Come on down, the Lord's working on your heart.
All your heads down, eyes closed. If you I see you in the back, raise your hand if you need the Spirit.
Right.
I see you in the back, raise your hand.
Yeah, it's talking, somebody's being talked to, and it works on you. So as a kid,
right,
with a very, the most rudimentary understanding of what is about to happen or what I'm even doing, I can remember the altar call day that I decided to be baptized. And I walked down there, and I remember the pastor, good man, always was good to us. And I don't want this to come off like I think it's ridiculous, but I do think about this so often. He was asking me, why I was there, because he's got his arm around you and it's private and the whole church is singing, the piano's playing. And I can remember whispering to him, I was like, yeah, I talk back to my mama and I shouldn't have said this to my daddy. And sometimes my parents want me to do something. And I went through this whole laundry list of just basic bull crap. I mean, nothing to do with actually hurting anybody, just kid stuff. But I was sorry for it. And that was that was all I can remember it. I mean, that's all I was telling him. And he prayed with me, and, I went through the baptism process, and I still remember it, and I still cherish that day. But when I call it that awakening experience happened again as an adult, and there was no water, there was no church, there was no pastor, there was no religion. I was just alone, in a place. It was like what happened felt like what I thought baptism was going to be like as a kid. And so I wonder about that. I mean, I'm saying all that to tell you that story because I wonder, did you have an experience like that too, where it's okay, I was baptized as a child, but then later something else happened that was like a new man, a new birth?
I think that keeps happening.
I mean, okay.
I don't think that's. I don't honestly really remember the baptism and the walking to the front and having this. I do remember, and I guess I've said some things already that are kind of dismissive of people's. I'm not dismissing anybody's belief. I don't want to come off like
I didn't want that to be that way.
Like I'm. Even the altar call is, whatever problems I have with it, it's still an invitation for transformation.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's an opportunity to change. To change. I mean, and so anyway, so I guess we'd go on these Christmas retreats in middle school and high school, and when I was in the youth group. And it was, like a 4-day, 5-day we'd have Bible studies, and we'd have like little sessions on discipleship, basically how to become more like Christ. And you'd stay up late. You'd have, there'd be some sleep deprivation happening. And usually by the fourth or, the end of the thing, when the church would come together, our little youth group would get together, there'd be some emotional breakthroughs happen. And they were spirit filled. I mean, I would call it spirit filled because it was transformation, transforming, looking at what you didn't like and what you wanted to become, and trying to find a path through that. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's would be, and then again, we got married and moved to New York when I was 19.
Okay.
And we moved to New York City, and we lived up there for 5 years. And so I went from leading worship at a Southern Baptist church to New York City, where I worked for a Jewish couple. We had there was a Muslim general manager at this hotel I worked for.
Yeah.
And before that, I mean, I'm in South, Louisiana, Lake Charles. I knew one Jewish kid and maybe a few Muslim kids at growing up, but I didn't know them. And all I really knew was that they're probably going to burn in hell, right? So
based on what the information they
don't believe in Jesus, and so that was just I didn't really have a deep understanding of their faith or know them. And then I moved to the city, and I worked at this hotel, and Ramadan came along, and the bellhop, there was no elevator in this hotel. And the bellhop would have to take people's luggage from their car. Someone would drive in from Pennsylvania and have, luggage for days in the car. And he'd have to go up 4 stories with, bag after bag after bag, and sweat's pouring off of him. And he would not drink water. It was Ramadan, and you don't eat or drink while the sun's up.
Yeah.
And I could not. I no longer could reconcile my faith with his faith being wrong. He believes what he believes stronger than I give up meat on Fridays in Lent? I don't go all day without drinking. Anyway, just that
it imprinted upon you, huh?
I went the wrong way with it. I threw the baby out with the bathwater. I said, if I can't be right and he can't be right, we both can't be right, so we must be imagining God, and there's no God.
Interesting.
And I went back into my I would call it evangelical atheism. I was trying to convince people who had faith that there was no God. You're wasting your time.
So so you went through that period too, like a second wave of atheism.
Oh yeah, and that that's
interesting.
That's me though. I'm all in. I'm very extreme. And so why I would felt the need. I wasn't like tearing down people, but I would try to point out inconsistencies with their faith structure, and I had a hard time, and I still do sometimes. If God is this all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving God, why do terrible things happen? Why do kids get brain cancer? Why, and that's still a struggle. I mean, I don't think any kind of platitude or can really help people who are going through a grief and a struggle like that. But anyway, that kind of is this supposed to be the good news?
No, man, this is what I love. I mean, this is the heart cave, right? I mean, we wander around this place together. In my view, I think that's where we grow. I mean, what you're doing right there, and this is exactly what this show has become. And it really has become the platform for this. And I do think something good eventually does come from other people hearing this. I mean, we've all wandered in different territories. I mean, I still, for me, I'm listening to you and I go, what has helped me? Because I've been through something similar. I'll give you a little story. I've been on several retreats, and I usually have good and bad takeaways from those retreats, and I'm honest about them. go on them and then walk out and go, oh my gosh, this was just up here, everybody should do it. I'm like, no, there was good, but there's also some things that I would prefer not to take away from those retreats. But I do remember one gentleman that he was just hard boiled, just like you said, like all in. He was trying to get me to go on this retreat. I mean, for months, I mean, gosh, even almost a year. And I finally, the timing worked out and I decided to go. And this guy was just like my cheerleader, man. I mean, he was like, go. He was like behind me the whole time. He was just coaching me through all these things. And I appreciated his companionship. Many months later, we had like a retreat reunion. And everybody was there having a good time. And this gentleman said he had lost his job and some other bad things had happened. And we were just sitting talking. I could tell he was down in the dumps. And I was just listening to him. And he leaned over to me and he said, can I tell you something? And I was like, yeah, man, you can tell me anything. He said, you know what? Sometimes I don't even know if all this stuff we're doing is real. And I just thought, wow, man, because this is like the guy at the front. Yeah. You know, he's the face. But he's telling me in my ear, I just don't even know. And I thought it's because he's going through some suffering. And it's not being quelled. The grief is not being comforted, and all the things that were promised when hard times come or tragedies hit. Yeah, I mean, that's like right into it, right? I mean, that's where you go, yeah, but why? I mean, why? I see this happening even in our country right now with all these, evangelizing that the prophecies and the dreams and the angels that are going to, give our president a second term and all this stuff. And now that's not happening. And you go, yeah. That's difficult when you've hinged your faith on a result.
Right.
That's tough, man.
I think that's, I guess that's probably one of the problems I had when I was, growing up like that is this need to be right, and the certitude that I am right, and that you need to just get on the train with me because we're going the right way. That's the problem. I think to allow doubt that's human.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. I mean, that the real truth is when we die, what happens? Nobody knows.
Right. I can't prove anything to you. There's
nobody knows. Yeah. And these intimations and these feelings that we have about what might be are they're not provable, I guess is the point. So we have to find our tribe. We have to find the people who can support us while we go through these doubts and allow us to actually go through them, go through the grief, go through this deconstruction, whatever belief that you held so dear. Sometimes you have to tear it down and try again. It's not the full thing. We try to put God in a box. He doesn't fit in any box. Any box we try to put, God in, it's not fitting.
Yeah.
He's beyond all boxes.
Yeah.
He's beyond these words that we say,
Right.
Only in the silence do I really find this peace and this I don't know if you call it understanding, this thing beyond words, knowing that I'm connected to you, I'm connected to everything, this planet, this love that flows through all of us. If we can just clear out the dirt, clear out the all this ego stuff we put on top of this, we can find the source of all love. So I don't know if that sounds like a complete ramble, but
no, it doesn't.
That's I think the certitude was the thing I'm railing against. Even now I think I'm right still in the way I'm talking, and I could be, but I am open to the possibility that I might be wrong. And I want to remain teachable, and that I don't have it figured out, and that there's room for doubt, Who would have thought this pandemic would happen like this? That, any of it, that we've reorganized our life, and I hope that when we come out on the other side, we will look at things and decide what's worth doing and what's what we can leave back and not have to continue.
Longtime Find the Good News listeners know that we often meander into topics on spirit, mysticism, religion, and wisdom traditions. If you are interested in these topics, I encourage you to seek out my new podcast, The Dawn Deacon with Brother Oran. On the Dawn Deacon podcast, I consider my small place in the whole of creation, asking the old questions that have perplexed human beings for ages. Why are we here? Is there a reason for our existence? How do we balm our sufferings, enlighten our minds, and awaken our hearts? Are there powers, energies, and realities just beyond our ability to comprehend them? On the Dawn Deacon podcast, I share the teachings, practices, and perspectives I have gathered as I've made my varied, sacred, ordinary way. I hope you'll join me at the Dawn Deacon podcast so that we can traverse this landscape together. Just search The Dawn Deacon with Brother Oran in your favorite podcast app or search engine, then subscribe. I mean, I know music's a big part of your life and a part of your ministry, right?
Right, yeah.
And so how have you utilized that during the pandemic? I mean, to reach out to people. I've listened to several times you've played music through, digital platforms and things like that. But I mean, how has that shifted for you personally? I mean, I know the experience from the listeners got to be completely different, but what about you just being alone, playing to who knows,
Right. I think that's, it's difficult to record, try to do like a worship service and record, because you're trying to make something that sounds good and that people can sing along to. That's one of the ways that my contemplative practice, spiritual practice, is just to play the guitar but not to be recorded and not to just to fall inside myself, to withdraw and try to be reconnected to the source. And that's most of the time that doesn't happen with words, that happens beyond words. And so when I try to do these, I play these worship songs, I try to find the spirit, and it's hard. I need feedback, and don't get feedback when you're staring at the camera by yourself.
Sure.
So it's more difficult. I think I have to let the appearance go and just find the spirit and record that. I don't know if that's very successful, if I've been successful doing that, but and I had another thought too, is that I'm haunted by this thing Richard Rohr said, that Jesus never asked anybody to worship him. He said, "Follow me." And when we sing these songs, it's not. I am offering my worship and my praise to God, but it's really to reorient my life and my thinking and my actions to be more Christ-like. And so there's a lot of songs though I can't do. I mean, I've sung some, but we do contemporary worship, but there's also a lot of hymns. And growing up, they were all about blood. Every hymn. Yeah. What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. And that's very meaningful for a lot of people who for me, it doesn't really ring true. Now I'm probably talking to some hair. I'm trying to. This is bad. I'm not in the moment. I'm not in the present.
No, I can see. I wish the audiences could see, because I can tell you're in a space right now. Like I know what this feels like. It's like, do you ever feel this? Tell me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you're in a space where you're like of discovery, like almost like you're intersecting different things, like you realize, like seeing connections between two or three different things.
Right, and it's also, I'm trying to speak what I have found to be true, my experience, and not step on somebody's toes.
Understand totally.
So,
It's difficult to do.
It is.
Because we all have our own lexicon. I mean, everybody within our tradition especially hinge it, like you just said that. I have these old hymnals. I'll segue into that. I mean, I got them at a Goodwill many years ago. I was like, oh, I love these because they were all the songs I remembered from as a child. But every once in a while, I'll actually use those as a part of my spiritual reading. I don't remember the songs, but I'll go to those old hymns, and you're right, a lot of the language is about blood and redemption. But what is so interesting, and I'm glad you brought this up, for me, I never understood that language as a young person, but I remember when something clicked for me, and it has to do with Buddhism, and I know this isn't popular with everybody, but when I was in my 20s, I remember the first time I ever heard someone read a little small portion from Shantadeva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And there was this one portion, and when I heard it, I wept. I mean, it came over me like a baptism. It was like these words sung like truth in my heart. I don't know any other way to say it.
Yeah.
But what was so strange is that I didn't have any sort of Buddhist imprints, even though they were coming out of the Buddhist tradition. But they were in such a mystical form, or they were touching on something so mystical that it kind of flowed through my Christian upbringing. And so when I heard, these words, may I be the doctor, may I be the medicine, may I be the nurse for all beings until everyone is healed. Yes. During aeons of famine, may I myself be food and drink. May I be an island for those who seek one, a lamp for those. I'm hearing those words, and all I could do, those words were coming out of Christ's mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when it gets into, though they may make me a source of jest and blame, let anyone who has encountered me, may it always be of value to them. And all these types of things about taking it upon themselves, the idea of the Bodhisattva, and then transforming it and then pouring it out for aeons and creating a feast of ultimate delight. And all of that was just popping for me going, I'm hearing Christ through these words.
Right.
Then when I go back and start reading those hymnals, it's like it was reinformed. All that language about the blood and this mystical value of it, it all started to just reconnect in a whole new cosmology for me. And so, now that's hard to explain. That's hard to share in a format outside of the one we have right here,
Yeah, right.
I just wanted to share that because I'm hearing what you're saying, because that language is so important. But the meaning, even scripture, you can sit with the same piece of scripture at different stages in your life and it'll reinform you in different ways. But different people, wherever they're at, are getting informed by it, sometimes by what's coming out of their tradition or their community, and they're not going any further, perhaps, at wherever stage they're in.
Yeah, that's... I keep coming back. I think that's just life. You keep coming and revisiting these same things at a different depth dimension than you hit it before. Blood is life. So I've had to reimagine what that's actually, of paying a ransom. And this part is the part that is we don't have to get so deep into theology that is boring and not because we don't know, right? We read these things and so. Well,
does it inform that? My thing, I had to kind of at some point, and I don't know when this happened, and maybe it's just been happening as the years have gone by, but at some point I had to sort of create some rules that were very, very similar. It was just some camping rules almost. Whenever I would go camping, especially like when I was in the Sierra Club and we'd camp as a group, they had some pretty strict rules about camping. And one was first do no harm.
Do no harm. Don't leave a trace.
Don't leave a trace, Yeah. And so
that's what we did. That's what we did in Utah. We was
okay. So it was the same.
We would make a fire and we'd rub sticks together, make a nest, blow it, make a fire, and in the morning, all those coals had to be ground up and distributed around the campsite so it didn't look like we had camped there. So, anyway, that's
Yeah,
I
it's
understand
almost
what you're
like,
saying.
well, yeah, if you can
That's what
apply
you need
those
rules
things for your
yeah.
religion or your beliefs,
Right.
and I go, okay, if I'm studying something, like let's say it's something from a shamanic type of indigenous culture or tribe or something. Well, I go, okay, it can inform me up until the point it hurts somebody else, you know. Kind of like, and I have the same exact feeling about medicinal plants and things like that, or hallucinogenics and things like that. I take the same approach. I'm like, look, I don't do any of those things. For me personally, I that's territory I just don't get into.
That's very interesting.
Because it's but it can hurt. It's like, I'm like, I get why someone would, and I get people and cultures that do, but then when it gets into the territory of where it's potentially harming somebody, I go, okay, look, the information, I have to kind of stop here. And that's the first do no harm rule.
Yeah.
You know, is this now harming another? If I taken my belief in something to a stage where it's not just informing me, it's now affecting negatively somebody else. I don't know. I don't even know if I strung that thought together properly, but I found that those types of rules for me have helped me.
Yeah.
Look at other people's faiths and traditions and say, oh, well, okay, I can go down this road for a little while and let it inform whatever is going on in my life. But then when it's like, okay, and today we're going to kill this chicken and we're going to, I don't mean to make fun.
Right.
I mean, I'm just using an example, but we've harmed a creature now. And I'm like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to back out right here.
It's interesting you bring up psychedelics. That's in my atheism in New York. I found God, or I didn't know what it was. I contributed it to some mental gymnastics that was happening when you took mushrooms. I ate some mushrooms and I felt connected with everything, more connected than I had, but at the same time, very similar to how I'd feel in a worship service.
Interesting.
This interconnected, I don't know, it's the peace and love that you feel, or that this experience that I've had. And so I equated God was the same as taking mushrooms, right? You can take mushrooms and find God. And then I did some reading, and they did a lot of experiments in the 60s. They did this Ram Dass, and all them. They did they dosed some people on Good Friday. It's called the Good Friday experiment, and people, I mean, they didn't. I don't think they knew that they were being dosed, but they had like a spiritual experience on Good Friday after having taken whatever, I forget which one they took, but it made them more connected and have an experience that was a mystical experience that was beyond. Not that you couldn't get there without using psychedelics. I think that's. I don't know if you've ever read the Ram Dass.
Yeah, he was one of the early.
Okay.
One of the earlier books that I encountered, and it's like any book, when you're trying to understand something, you're just like, whoa, this is the one. This is explaining everything that's going on,
Yeah. Well, I just, he went to India, and Maharaji he tried to dose him. He tried to give him a bunch of LSD, and it didn't affect him at all.
It's already.
His explanation was that he was already on this higher plane, on this higher frequency, or whatever terminology we can say. And so, so that, for me at the time, I felt that was more proof that God is just a mental, something happens
something
in your
just
brain.
In your mind, like a euphoric connected feeling, right?
Yeah, that makes you that happens, and I'm sure there's some neuroscience to that too, that the part of the brain that in meditation is similar to the one when you're having some ecstatic church experience. Speaking in tongues is something like that. But anyway, I just found it interesting to get back to how I ended up coming back to church. Is we had my son. My son was born in New York, and so there was, I guess, 5 years where I was this combative, militant, atheist, whatever. We'd come home for Christmas, and we'd go to church, and I'd hate every minute of it.
Really? So, but you're just doing it like kind of for the family, like tradition. Yeah.
This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go to church on Christmas Eve, and I'm gonna listen to this ghost story about this unbelievable virgin who's gonna have a baby who,
Interesting, man.
The whole story, is outrageous. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. But at this point, I choose to believe most of this, right? Anyway, I don't know.
I love this. I can't wait to hear how you get
I got sidetracked again. But so my son was born, and in that moment he was born, it was a spiritual experience for me. We waited all day. We got to 5 a.m. It was like 2 a.m. the next morning before he came out. And, we had nurses and doctors all around all day. And then when it's time for the baby, nobody's there, and finally one nurse came. The doctor finally came as he's coming. But after he was born, I don't even think they let me hold him very long.
Really?
And she then they took her to a room. She had a shared room in New York. So and I couldn't stay overnight. So I had to go home. And my mom was up there with us. So and we walked to the car, and I apologized to my mom for, to everything,
Yeah, man. It just hits you like a wave of love, right? And regret and compassion, all of that.
Right.
Like oh man, that's powerful stuff right there. It really is. That's like the elixir, man, right there.
Yeah. So, all these things, all these constructs, these things I made to explain the world no longer work. It no longer is working for me, right? So I've been touched by this love that transcends, and that was I don't know, that was just it's amazing.
And that was and it flipped, right? How old are you at that point? It's like
I'm 24.
24. Okay, wow, interesting, man.
Yeah, so I and I didn't go back to like I didn't get tied up in dogmas or anything. I just went from there's definitely nothing to there's something.
Something.
What it is, I
mysterious.
I can't. Yeah, it's a mystery, and it still is. It's the mystery.
Yeah.
Why is there something instead of nothing? I don't know. That's the mystery. Why?
Right.
What started this all? I don't know. That's the mystery. That's what we are constantly. I'm constantly trying to. I'm curious about. I'm in wonder of, how this all works. How we can be connected and interconnected, and the more I go along this path, the more connections I see between everything. Some people might want to stop at humans. Some people might want to stop at animals. God is spirits in animals, trees, living things. But I've come to realize that atoms make up everything. This if it's this piece of wood, this computer, a rock, the sun.
Yeah.
It's what it is that makes the electrons go around, and what makes gravity work. All of these things, it's interconnected. Anyway, it's God. Whatever it's the universe, whatever word term that works for you. Love, the source of all love. I think that's. So it took me, and then I was. I moved to agnostic. We moved back down to Lake Charles. I started working. I started drinking a lot. I ended up becoming an addict. Or I was an addict. I was always wanting more. I think that's just part of my either or all in kind of thing. I gotcha. So I became an addict, and my wife gave me basically an ultimatum. I could go to AA, or we could start going to church. And so I went to a couple of 12-step meetings.
Yeah.
And decided that was not going to be for me. Let's go to church so I can keep drinking, and I'll just moderate.
Gotcha.
I'll just rein it in. Well, there's no reining it in, man.
Moderation. I wish you were going to do the moderation thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I was just a hard drinker, or I wasn't an addict. I was just able to I was able to control it, but there was no control. I was powerless over alcohol. My life had become unmanageable. And so I'd been going to church. We went to church, I don't know, 5 years. And finally, there was, I couldn't, my life was unmanageable. I was still going to work. I never got fired. I never got, the only thing I was in jeopardy of was losing my wife, my kids, my house, everything that I love. That's the only thing I was in jeopardy of, just everything, losing everything.
Right. Wow, it's harsh to say it. I hear you. Yeah. I'm only in jeopardy of losing everything that I love. Yeah, which is everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was this, as a gift of desperation is what it really was. And so I ended up going back to these 12 steps. And the truth is, 12-step program is spirituality for dummies. It is a step-by-step guide, about waking up and growing up and cleaning up, waking up, growing up. It's turning your will and your life over to a power, a God as you understand him. And that's what really unlocked God for me was finding a higher power, a God as I understand him, or them. It wasn't the God of the Bible. It wasn't the God of. It was an actual relationship with something that could deliver me from this thing I could not do for myself. Right? I could not stop. And it turns out that my upbringing has informed me of God, and I've viewed it in different lenses, in different ways. But my shape of God changed after I decided. After God accessed my heart and enabled me to change, right? To stop doing this thing that I could not stop on my own. I mean, I tried. I mean, we started church. I could make it about 2 weeks. I think that was my limit was about 2 weeks, and then I'd get so restless I would go off on a bender, right? And that's. I'm just thinking back, like, why am I such a slow learner? I mean, like, this is like that's my stubborn, strong will has led me to. So for me, surrender is like every morning when I wake up, I have to. It's a daily act of surrender. I have to let go of my. Well, I have to let go of whatever's not God's will, right? I have to find connection and love for all things.
It's not enough for you. Yeah, I understand. I mean, this feeling, it's, I've tried this. I mean, not in the same way. We have different stories about how we got there, but yeah, I've tried to draw smaller circles. And what I've found is it's just not going to happen. I mean, I've tried to say, you know what, it's going to be enough to just take care of the basics. It's going to be enough to just love those close to me. It's going to be enough to not worry about my community. It's going to be enough to not worry about the people around me, my neighborhood, my country, the world, the creature. I mean, I've tried that. I've tried because that type of love that starts to draw greater, wider rings, it can be almost like exhausting in the sense. It's like I know this is going to sound like a real. To me, it's just a mystery, but it's like it exhausts you, but it keeps filling you back up at the point of your exhaustion because it wants more. It just keeps wanting. Like the other day, I was talking about a fire, that way, and it was the camping and the embers, and I was like, you start with, you say, I'm going to build a small fire, just a small fire. I'm going to put the twig of my home, and maybe the twig of a part of my business to build this little fire, and I'm just going to put the things I want in there. And then you start to sense that it's going out, and you go, well, maybe I need to put some more wood in. And then I start to put in another part of my business and then other aspects of my life. And before long, it's going great. Now you have a fire, but you need to keep giving me logs. You need to start putting more in, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. I can't draw a I can't cut trench around it. It doesn't want to be in a trench. And it's a strange thing because sometimes I sit back and go, what's it all for? What's all this exhaustion for? But that's what a fire's doing. I mean, it's exhausting out the resources. It's saying more.
It's transforming. It's transforming,
right.
Like transforming wood into light and heat.
Yeah. It's. So I understand where you're going with that train of thought. It's like, I don't even have to ask the question. I mean, I was going to ask you this today because, I mean, you obviously have a attraction or an affinity for the mystics, you know? Mm-hmm. And I actually am curious, like, at what point did that start? I mean, when you went, you know, or did you read something somewhere and you go, oh, this sort of describes what's going on in my life? Or did something happen like that where you just kept leaning towards that?
It was Richard Rohr. I mean,
really?
That's I was introduced to him through 12-step spirituality. He has a book, but it was most of his stuff in the early was tapes. He would have these tapes that would go out. Yeah. Anyway, he has his book called Breathing Underwater that basically breaks down the 12 steps. And I think the 12 steps would be good for anybody. You know, I think that's it really is spirituality for dummies. The first part is you release control over what you never had control of to begin with, and you come to the realization, and then you lean into God, who has all power, giving your life and will over to God, right? As you understand Him, whatever that looks like, and then you have to take inventory of yourself. All the things in the past that have happened that line up. Yeah, you have to repent of your sins, I guess is how that would be. You have to change your mind about who God is and what your part is. And so you look through all these things that have my problem is I like to blame other people for the problems that I caused myself, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't allow you to do that. You have to look for your part in each of these things.
Yeah.
And then once you've identified those, you have to try to reconcile with the people. You have to make amends to the people that you've harmed, or, you know, that you can, if it would not cause more harm. And then the last 3 steps of the 12-step program is like the maintenance program. You maintain conscious daily contact with your higher power, and then you try to spread this love to others. You know, and he just broke that down in ways that really, and the way he would talk about Jesus. I love Jesus. I love Jesus Christ. If all I had was the red words in the Bible, I don't know if I'd ever got hung up, you know, with the dogma and the theology parts. He was so giving. He got mad when he turned over the tables when they were selling animals to be sacrificed. You know, that the money changes. He's like, we don't need God doesn't need this. God doesn't need your sacrifice. But what he wants is your heart, right? He wants he wants you to become a vessel so he can fill you up, become empty so he can fill you up, and you can pour that love out to others. I think that's kind of the same kind of imagery of you have with the fire. It just keeps growing. It just keeps there's abundance. It's not like love is some scarce commodity. It's here and there's a lot of it, but we have to be empty to be full, which is, the paradox. So I got into Richard Rohr through that, and then some other books he had changed the way I viewed Christianity.
Yeah.
He talked about this alternative orthodoxy, which is this Franciscan way of seeing it, that the atonement is a different, So through Richard Rohr, that's how I found the Center for Action Contemplation, and then which the daily meditations are wonderful. I got the opportunity to go to this living school. I spent we did 3. It's a 2-year program. You go to Albuquerque like 4 times. I got to spend a week. Actually, that was 3 years ago, like this week, MLK week. Yeah. Yeah, we got to spend a week with Richard Rohr. He had just had a heart attack, and he still came and gave our little intensive, and it was just connecting with all these people still seeking, and in this tradition, right, in the Christian tradition, at the same time honoring other traditions. It's the perennial tradition, the truth that's always been the truth, whether or not we, how we frame it and what we put boxes around. It's still. So, and Richard Rohr and Thomas Merton, that's...
we have those two in common for sure. I mean, I think that we find those intersections because they're, I've always called it the voice of ages. I mean, it's like they're speaking with the voice that is going to be relevant over and over again, as time marches on.
Right. Yeah, I think so. It's, I think the biggest realization is that the shadow and the light are not. It seemed at church that I was always putting on a mask. I'm only going to be a glad hander. I'm only going to give you the happy, positive stuff. But all this other darkness is this grief. I got to keep that away because I can't show you that part.
Yeah. But
I mean, that's the part that the vulnerability and you're not authentic if I can't see your scars. If I can't see your, I'm only getting what facade you're showing me. And
I like that. I love that what you just said there. The visualization for me, and I've never really actually sat and spoke of it this way, but I have a little iron anchor sitting here next to me. Actually, it's and then also in the show logo, there's an anchor, and because of that visualization, I mean, if Christ is hope, and hope is the symbol, it's this anchor. What does an anchor do? I mean, an anchor isn't up on a hill. An anchor isn't, sitting out in the sun. An anchor, if it has any value, is diving down below the depths where the light is not there. It's going down, 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 down. I mean, and then even further still as time goes on, an old anchor will be beneath the surface where there is no light at all. And that to me is such a powerful image. I mean, that sometimes I even think of Christ that way, for me, just a strong visual. It's like this, it's God sending an anchor down through creation, like from whatever these other realms are, however we think of God, somehow this anchor forms and solidifies as a human man. And beyond that, through pain and suffering and death, sunk even further still to the lower realms of creation, to whatever beings are there, beyond our comprehension of whatever sufferings we're going through here. And it just kept sinking and sinking, and then raises up and carries everything up through that. I don't know. There's something beautiful about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of my favorite Richard Rohr quotes is that Jesus did not come to change our God's mind about us, about humans. He came to change human minds about God, like what God is. He came as the poor baby. And then he spent his life with the outcast and the marginalized, and he loved mercy, and he fed the orphan, and he clothed the widow. He did the things that we talk about. He broke the law nonstop. That's what he healed on the Sabbath. He came to show us that we're boxing in God, right? That God is this love that we can pour out.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested. I mean, I don't know how you, when you tell me, I've heard you say that you go into the cemetery.
Yeah.
And you pray for the dead. I heard something about an apparition one time. This is very interesting to me. I don't have any experience. I'm very curious.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share that. I mean, I always dance around the way I tell this because there's living people involved as well that are living relatives of this person, but that really was my experience. the easiest way to say it is that I was in just a moment of despair. I mean, truly in despair. I mean, I didn't know at the time what it was, but it was just depression, and a lot of young people have it. My family was not, mental health wasn't really discussed as much in that time period. And my family never talked about mental health. So there was the word depression meant nothing to me. All I could do was describe what was going on, and what it was, and the best way for me to say it was like I felt like I was dying, but I had nothing wrong with me. Hopelessness, death, despair, just true despair. Yeah. Had no positive outlook on life, and I knew something was wrong. I knew that I told somebody, I can remember, I don't remember what friend it was, but my words to them was, if I don't do something, I'm going to die. But of course, there's nothing physically wrong with me. So I decided to kind of make a retreat for myself, just on a whim. I said, I need to get away from everybody and everything. I bought a marble composition notebook, and I was going to write in it, And I went out of town. I got a hotel room, and my plan was to just contemplate that weekend, like really look inside of myself and like, okay, what is broken in here? Why am I doing this? Why do I feel this way? Everything went wrong though. The first night, I mean, no peace, no quiet. There was a terrible lightning storm that night, and I went to bed. The power was out in my hotel room, so I just went to sleep really almost more depressed. And that night I had a dream about a cemetery. I mean, that's all I can say. It was just a dream, like a normal dream that was very vivid, but it was very particular, like the details. I woke up. I remember it in my dream that I felt all that death was lifted off of me. And so I decided, well, I'll go to a cemetery. I said, maybe I'll just go there to write. That was kind of like my thing. I was like, that's what I'll do. The weather was good the next day. I said, I'm going to go to find a cemetery, and I'll write. And when I picked the cemetery, it was, come to find out now, I mean, it's the oldest cemetery in the Louisiana Purchase. So there's really ancient old graves there. And so I went there. And as soon as I walked in, like, it was like and I don't know if it was just dream memory, the deja vu feeling, but it was a feeling like all that stuff was lifting off of me, just like it had in my dream, and everything looked similar. I'll say similar for the folks that don't believe the story, but I mean, it was very much the dream. Yeah. And so I just walked through the cemetery, and it was like and I want to say I probably romanticized this moment over the last 5 years. But my recollection is that it was almost like a magnetic pull to a portion of the cemetery. And so I went over the hill, and there was a fresh, looked to be fresh grave. And it was covered with sunflowers. I mean, just littered with them. Like, I say littered because I was remember that memory of going, why are people pouring flowers all over this grave? I mean, it just hit me, like, stunned me. And like a lightning strike, I fell down on my knees, and I just felt all that stuff. And I've always said I threw it up into the ground over this person's grave. It just started pouring out of my body, like it was being taken off of me. And I felt, I don't know. The only way I can say it is, was like I felt the presence of a girl. This was a girl's grave. And I heard a girl's voice. And it was saying, that's gone. Go. It was like, and it was these words, I wrote them down. It was, go with your heart. And that sounds so simple. I mean, it's anything and everything. Go with your heart. Go with your heart. Use the force, whatever. But for me, those words carried a mission. It was like, what it meant was, you can leave now. And when you leave, your heart is going to be your eyes now. That was the way I understood that. Your heart is going to be your eyes. And that's when things got really transformative. Leaving that cemetery that day, and that understanding, it was like something got unlocked. I mean, the world looked brand new, the connections to the creatures in the earth and other human beings, and even just starting to see messages in other things. And that sounds insane to some people, but that was what it was like, man. I mean, and she was involved in it because there were specific things. I mean, I ended up meeting her family. We had some conversations that were really uncanny for people. At that time, there was no internet, so there was no like pre-research. It was really they were surprised by things that I was writing that I would relate to her. There were things that they were writing and discovering, and when we connected, it was like it was meant to be that we connect and communicate. And so what I learned from that was not to be so closed off to the afterlife, for one, that something does happen to human beings when we pass over. And again, you say I have no Christian I wasn't putting it in a Christian context. So I was just, it was like, okay, so if there's something after we die, and they do care about us and love us and see us when we're in despair, and one, where is that, or what is that? How is that happening? How are they trying to communicate with us? And then why? And the only answer I could come up with was they love us. They love us. They want us to understand that we're loved, that we're all connected, that there is no such thing as death. Like, it's just God, and I'm going to use that word. It's like that, and they're not, it's not like God's the general and ordering one to come, like, oh, go help him. It wasn't like that. It was just like an identity emerging out of this grand identity and saying, I humans understand other humans, so therefore I approach you as something familiar. And to familiar was that girl in her identity. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly.
Yeah, no, I'm following you, man. I'm following you completely. I think that's amazing. It's an incredible story, man.
It just keeps happening, though. Do you know what I mean? Like now it happens when I go to cemeteries. These things will happen. Like I've never shared this story, but like recently it happened where I kept dreaming about a guy from my high school. I mean, truth, James, I mean, it was like I would wake up and tell my wife, I said, this guy and I were not friends. Like, we didn't really know each other. And honestly, I didn't like his brother. And it was just like a whole thing. Like, I don't know why I'm dreaming about this guy. And so on a whim, like after I kept dreaming about him, and they were strange, like he kept coming to me in these, I would see him walking around corners and he had like a red lighted lantern in his hand. And it was just the weirdest thing. It was like he was just out of like reach, like he wanted me to follow him. So I went on the internet and looked him up and kind of found out he'd been murdered. And I was like, what in the world? Okay. And so I just decided to pray about him. Within days, all of a sudden, I was encountering his family members. We would run into each other. And I went out to I hadn't buried my father yet, and someone had told me about a pauper cemetery here in Sulphur. And I said, well, I'm going to go out there. So I went out to this pauper cemetery. And
which one?
Farquhar.
Yeah, right there by Tank 62.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
I went out there. And James, I walked out there and I was like, why? And I just literally said to God, why am I out here? You know, why am I out here today? Man. And so I was standing on one side of the cemetery and I decided to pray the chapel of the Divine Mercy. And I closed my eyes and I could see this guy clearly in my mind. It was like, it was just overwhelming love. Just like, love this person. I want you to love this person. And I said, okay. And I closed my eyes. I opened my eyes and I said, okay, just guide me. Tell me what to do. It's as simple as that. Just tell me where to go, what to do. Because I'm having a hard time with this. And I turned around. I counted 10 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I stopped. And I turned around and looked down. And there was his grave. Like right there. I was like, this is uncanny. This is meant for me to do something. Well, come to find out, for me, it was just a message for his family. Because they had been struggling. They kept, their big worrying was that he was in hell and suffering and being tortured for all eternity based on their tradition.
Right.
And all I could say, I said, is, look, all I know is when I see him, he looks healthy. His skin is clear and clean. He looks like himself, but like he's almost like been enhanced somehow. Like he's not suffering. All the things that the wear and tear is gone. And he's in the presence of this crimson light. Like, and I kept seeing that light, and the way I understood that red light was like the mystical blood of Christ. I know that to other people that may sound like, what? But that was the way my heart was interpreting that. I was like, he's being shined upon. He's trying to lead me to tell you can let this go. And it was like a huge. One of the family members told me, said, this pain of worrying about him suffering an eternal damnation has caused more grief after his death than his death did.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, well, okay, if there's any blessing to be had from praying with the dead or for the dead, then this is it. And I don't know what kind of container to put that in, but I just let it happen.
I love that story. That's amazing. I spent a lot of time right there on the other side of the fence from that cemetery.
Farquhar?
Yeah. This I don't know, about 6-7 years of my life was spent on them tanks right there.
Oh yeah, okay.
And in the middle of the night, I don't have any story that's even remotely. I desire that, though. I desire this otherworldly something. Sometimes in dreams I'll have some experience, but to have, and there's been some synchronicities and some things that are that are not unexplainable. Coincidence, if you want to coincidence it off, but I choose to believe it's deeper than that. But I haven't had experience like that. And I'm at one time in New York when I was working at the hotel. I worked midnight to 8, and it was a little 42-room hotel right off of Times Square. And there would one night this guy came in. The door was locked. I had to go downstairs and open the door, let him in, and the things he had to say to me. I mean, I'm an atheist at this time. I'm not really looking for any kind of insight. But this guy was like an angel to me. Like he was. Wow. He was the things that the encouragement that he gave me, and he just walked out. I mean, he didn't. It's like he came to tell me something, and then he left. And I'm sure he was a real guy. I'm not saying he was a ghost or an angel, but at the same time, like why he came when he came and why he had to say what he had to say, just felt. Looking back, feels like it, at the time I was like, was that an angel? Was that what this? Anyway, that's
But it's like an influence. I understand what you're saying. I mean, we encounter. I believe this. I really do. That we encounter influenced messengers in human beings. They've been influenced by spirit to inform us or be with us. And it happens in such strange ways. I mean, I remember when my father-in-law died, after his funeral, we were at his house. It was right after the hurricane, and me and my wife were sitting out on the back porch of their home, and a lot of people were there. They were in the home, and there were salesmen going around trying to get roofing jobs. Right. And we were sitting there in grief. I mean, my wife was really having a hard time, I mean, as she should. And we were sitting there, and guy walks up. He's got a roofing card, and he was doing his pitch, saying, "Hey, I'm doing some roofs in the neighborhood." And I don't think he realized, obviously he was just walking home to home. He has no idea he's walking into this huge swelling of grief.
Right.
And so I just spoke up. I said, we just lost my father-in-law. We're at this actually his way, we're his, I don't know what you call it, after the funeral where everybody's gathering. And the guy's demeanor shifted. He didn't just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to leave." Like his whole body language shifted, and his eyes flickered completely different. And he said, "I lost my mom." He just went right into it. He said, "I lost my mother a couple of years ago, and I don't want to pretend like I know what you're going through." He said, "But if you don't mind, I wrote something the day she died. I'd like to read it to you." And he had it in his pocket. And he stopped and he read that. And I'm telling you, it was like the voice of the comforter, And then he we took his business card and he left. He didn't ask to say, I'm going to pray with you or none of that. He didn't just offer platitudes. He became the sage. I mean, like, guy just going around trying to get roofing jobs, but he became the sage. And I told my wife, I still have his business card and I kept it because I was like, we met the Spirit, whatever that may be, influencing another human being to offer compassion, in words that comforted.
I think that's what we're called to do, and we missed the point a lot. I love that story. We're called. This is my. I wish it was true. I'm about to say something I wish was true, but it's not quite true. My purpose in life is to be in solidarity with the suffering, not to offer some platitude, but to come alongside someone, an alcoholic, somebody who is who's grieving, who's suffering. Let's leave it at that, and just come alongside and be with them. Right? That's what I say that, like that's my aspiration. Like that's what I want to do. And a lot of times I'm so self-absorbed, I'm not doing any of that. Right? I see.
Hey man, I'm the same way.
I'm and it's not like you say. I can pray for people, but sometimes just being in the room, just being next to them, is a lot. The compassion comes in many varieties, and if you have to, you might have to use words, but a lot of times it's in actions. It speaks so clear and so conveys love in a tangible way.
Listening to you say that, it does remind me of that podcast I listened to the other day with Jim Finley. And he said something I'd never heard before. Maybe he'd written it somewhere before, but I'd never heard it. And I remember thinking this, and it reminds me of what you're saying so much. I thought after I listened to that podcast, I sat kind of stunned with those words and that visual. And honestly, even in the last few days, I've been taken to wearing a medal that has the Turin Shroud imprint on it because it's just the simplest prayer, Lord, show me your face. And Jim Finley said, in an answer to like, what is Christianity? Like, what would you say to someone? And he said, I want you to imagine that you're walking up on the side of a cliff or a hill, and there's a man sitting there waiting on you. It's Jesus. Very simple, just a normal man. And you go sit next to him. And now I want you to think of the thing that pains you most that you don't tell anyone. What's hurting you the most? The thing that you harbor, and it's really, you're just too ashamed to tell anybody. He leans over and he puts his ear up to your mouth, and you whisper that into his ear. What does he say to you? And he didn't say anything else after that. That was it. That was the whole reflection. He didn't. And I was doing that as he was saying those words, and I told my darkest pain and secret, my fears. And I heard comfort. I mean, I remember sitting there, and it was like it washed over me. He was with me in my suffering, my private suffering in that moment. And I thought, if someone had just given me that in a bottle or in a text and said, this is the whole of what you need to understand to be a follower of Christ, just this, I thought I would have been all in. If someone gave me that on day one, instead of all the theology and all the must-dos and the rubber stamps and rites and rituals, all I needed was to meet the Comforter.
Right,
in person like that. I don't know. It was mystical. Something just happens with that.
Yeah, I love Jim Finley. He was one of the teachers in the living school was Jim Finley and Richard Rohr and Cynthia Bourgeau. He has a way that is I aspire to. He is so tender hearted.
Yeah.
He and to know. He talks about sometimes about how our woundedness is really that's our power, and the way that you can heal the woundedness is someone or to heal someone else's wounded. Now you never it's to touch it with love, but you have to let all these defenses down to just and you can't just to put your finger on it with love, and that's the trade out these sorrows and these griefs for love. I sound like I'm saying some more platitudes, but this is
it's very real for you, though. I mean, that's the path. Yeah.
It is. It's when you tell them that story. I haven't heard him say that story, and I didn't quite listen to that podcast, but. He reminded me when he was Thomas Martin was his spiritual director. He had a story about when Thomas just wanted to hear about the pigs.
The pig working.
Jim Finley would go. He wanted to hear about the pigs. He didn't.
Tell me one thing that happened in the pig barn.
That's crazy. I'm here talking to you, and I'm trying to talk about this stuff that is hard to encapsulate, but the truth is it's all encapsulated in what's happening right here in the physical pigs. Anyway.
No, you're right. I Jim Finley told that story again in that podcast, and I thought, Merton, that's so masterful of Merton, because that's really it. He said, you know what, if I want to reach this person, I've got to reach them in the ordinary, in the regular place. That's partly what I guess. I agree. I'm with you. Like you said that, I just want to be with people. Like ultimately, I agree with that. I do too. I just want to be with them around a fire out in the cold, and just say, hey, I know the good fires over there. I know the AC and all the nice cool stained glass and the gold and the symbols and the books. I know that's all right there, and that's good. You can go there, but if you're not ready to go there, I'll go sit with you out here in the woods, man, and we'll just sit around a small fire together, and maybe our backs will be cold and our fronts will be warmed.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not ready to go in there, but I agree. I mean, there's people out there in the ordinary spaces. They're just not ready. One of these guys I listen to, He's in apologetics, and he debates with atheists, and you might find it interesting. You probably have watched his videos, and now I can't think of his name; it escapes me. But he said something that just stuck with me, and he said, because he gets a lot of flack for not talking enough about Jesus, because he's a Christian, but he's mostly talks about God or trying to reveal God, and he said, if I can't get someone to even believe in intelligent, or to subscribe to any ounce of intelligent design, let's say, how am I going to get them to Jesus? I can't draw a line for those people. They'll never walk across that line.
Right.
And that stuck with me. I thought, if I can just convince someone in the heart, just start with creation, just the harmony of things, the design of things, the order, the artistry, the repeating patterns. If I can start there, and someone can just even say, hey, you know what? I'd be open to the idea that there's something perhaps orchestrating or unfolding this. If we can start there, I'm okay with that. I'm okay to start there, in the most rudimentary sense of that even.
Well, there's a Frederick Buechner has this saying that there's a lot of atheists that believe in God, that really they act as if they believe in God, and there's a lot of religious people that act like they're atheists, like they don't believe there is a God, in their actions. I butchered it, but that's the gist of it. I have so many friends that are I guess call them non-believers, who exhibit fruits of the Spirit that are,
interesting, yeah.
that aren't. They didn't name it. They didn't learn
right.
but to think that God is not acting in their lives and is not providing and is I think not true.
Right.
I keep thinking that even if we don't know, the whole time I thought, there was no God, it didn't change his love for me, or his seeking after me. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's true even when people are not caught up in a faith tradition. I think for sure, my thought is that if you have a faith tradition, you'll have more connection and more opportunity to be in the Spirit. But at the same time, I've seen people who hunt. I'm not a big hunter, but I have a lot of friends that go out in nature, and that is like a communion with God. I mean, that.
I've sensed the same thing as an interesting way to bring that up, but you're right. I've heard men that are friends of mine who are hunters talk about the reason they go hunting has very little to do with the actual hunting of the animal.
Yeah.
It's more to be in nature and just the silence and the peace and quiet.
So I really like talking to people about God and never talking about God, never having to name it. And when that happens, it's just an interconnected feeling of I don't know how this fabric is woven, but it seems to be woven pretty majestically. The people in my life, the people I'm connected with, and the exchange of love that happens. So we have and I had another interesting question. So I should have wrote all these down, man. I've been listening to this podcast for a while. I'm like one of those guys that's like a long time listener, first time caller. but you lived in Colorado for a little
while. Yeah, I sure did.
Okay.
Glenwood Springs, Carbondale area.
Oh, okay. I love Colorado. That was while I was getting sober, we went to Colorado and camped out at Estes Park when my wife was still pregnant with our third kid. And we camped out there. Oh, dude, I've never been more scared driving up a mountain in my life. It's like, they got the road is just like a white line and immediate death.
You're right off the edge. And I have a fear of heights. I have to drive. I can't be a passenger. If I'm, you know what I mean? Like I can't be on the outer edge.
That's me too, man. I was driving in the middle of the road. These big RVs just zooming up. Anyway, I have this deep love for Colorado. And after these hurricanes, you're like, man, I'd love to leave. And,
I've had thoughts like that,
and move there, move somewhere. I worked in the refineries for 13 years. In and out. We need gasoline. The system is broke. The system is broke, but we don't have the solution yet.
Yeah,
right?
We haven't figured out how to replace it yet.
So,
fully.
Anyway, I'm not sure why I jumped to this Colorado part, but I think that's why I wanted to get to ecology and care for the planet.
Yeah.
And I see people care for the planet that don't know God, don't have, they know God. They don't have some kind of
like a formation, like a religious formation.
But I had the same thing when I was in New York as an atheist. I wrote a song disparaging Walmart, because they got these sweatshop labor. We're paying these people 12 cents an hour, and there's a huge profit margin there, but it's not sustainable. Like we're buying all our shoes are made in Indonesia or Vietnam or Chinese. All our smartphones are made, and when I came back, down here. I mean, I wouldn't buy shoes that were new from made in China. I didn't want that. It had to be made in the U.S. I wanted somebody who had a union or had some kind of some equity, some equality, some I don't know the right word. I didn't want to be part of participating in the system of oppression.
Sure.
And that had nothing to do with God. That was just a humanist view. I want to be good to my fellow man, just to be good to my fellow man. I don't want to be part of this exploitive thing. And so that's the same kind of way in Colorado. They seem to have pockets of super progressive and also super conservative views. I'm lost my train of thought. Oh, so I became I came back into church, and my thirst for justice for my fellow man kind of went away. It's like, well, this is the system. We have to play into this. I'm not going to change the system. It's working for me. We were never gonna live in Lake Charles again after we moved away, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
See how well
that's what we all say.
I was never gonna work in a refinery. My dad worked in a refinery. I was never gonna work shift work, and I did all these things. All of a sudden, all these things I said I was never gonna do, and an opportunity happened where I lost my job, and now I'm going back to school as a 37-year-old man in college, and now because I'm not part of the system that's I had a hybrid car while I'm thinking I'm doing something. I got a hybrid car while I'm at a place making gasoline. I'm doing my little part to help the environment. But I've had to, over this past, pandemic, reevaluate all the systems that I participate in, and the systems, and they're good and they're bad. And if I can eliminate some of the bad, I have the power to do that. I can't do that for my community, but I don't have to participate, right? Yeah. I don't have to. I can't seem to stop going to big box stores and buying stuff I need to eat out of boxes and plastic, and I haven't solved that one. I don't have time to go. I haven't made time. Everybody's got time.
I hear you though. It's tough. I haven't understand
made the homestead. I haven't made but that's all godliness. I mean, that's all.
Yeah, it's mixed into that creation. For sure. And I think a lot of times we don't pay attention. Yeah.
We serve coffee at church sometimes, and we had for a long time we had these styrofoam cups, and things that never decay. And single use everything. Yeah. I mean, and now everything's single use because it's COVID. We don't want to die. So
right.
Germs, and we're back to single use. So there's a place for plastics. I don't know.
There is a place for plastics. That's what's interesting. I think that sometimes human beings take an all or nothing approach. Like
that's
it's even like issues that become hot button items for people in religions. Like we don't have to talk about this because it's so
let's do it.
Divided. But like abortion is an issue that people use like that. It's the same thing. Yep. It's like all or nothing. It's then all or nothing approach. If you're going to vote for somebody and they're not against abortion 100% all the way, you're willing to accept 100 other terrible things that they're all about. Somehow that gets put, it's like this battering ram to get things to go through, and so you're told that you're compromising, but it's like this sort of hawk's eye view that we're going, well, wait, what's the greater good here? Like, what's the big full scope, species annihilation picture that I need to be really looking at here instead of this one issue? But then I say that, and then I'll turn around and say, but I adore a being that supposedly cares about the individuality and the one in their particular troubles. I mean, I used to say this prayer with my son at night to comfort him, and it was, I would ask the Spirit to fill all the cracks in his room that we don't see, the rusty hinges, all the little spaces that we can't see. I want you to fill that with love and protection. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to kind of imprint on him that that's how you're loved. Your heart's like your room. It's not just the stuff you see, the bed, the table, the TV, the chair. It's hidden in the back drawer, the sock that's collecting dust bunnies. That's also being permeated. I want you to think like that because that's how eventually I want you to, see your own heart being loved. And but I say that, but then I'll turn around and say, yeah, but we need to take a broad species approach. So I don't know. I feel like it's a dance. Like it's somewhere. It's very situational.
It's both. It's both ends.
It's both ends.
That's the problem.
It's the same thing with ecology and stuff. It's the same thing. It's like I still have a gas guzzling car. I don't really have the resources to replace that. If I did, what's can I afford a vehicle that is there a place for me to replenish its energy? I don't know. There's just all kinds of questions I have about it. I mean, what's the greater good?
I think that's just hearing you speak like that. I think that's important to acknowledge this grace in all things too, right? I mean, for all our shortcomings, where we aren't where we want to be, but at the same time, encouragement to change the things we can change.
Yeah.
And that's to be mindfulness, to integrate mindfulness into everyday everything.
Yeah.
To see Christ in everyone, even the people that you might detest or not. We have such a. I feel this way. I'm 37 years old. The world is how it is, and it's been this way, for hundreds of years. But the truth is, it hasn't been this way for hundreds of years. It's only, in the Hayden Planetarium in New York, you come out of the planetarium and you go down this long spiral case, and it just starts with the Big Bang, and then and it's a couple of big circles, and then when you get to the end, there's a very small little piece. I mean, you walked, I don't know, 100 meters, 200 meters around this helix, is the amount of time humans have existed. and to think that in this short time we missed the deep time,
deep time. Well, that's it.
To see. Anyway,
it's like I hear everything you're saying, and I'm with you, because I had thoughts just like about not even a day ago. I had to go to a big box store to get supplies. I mean, I just had to. It was time. We hadn't had a payday in a while, and we finally got a payday, and it was like, hey, we got to do some grocery shopping, replenish our supplies. We were just out of sync with our financial pendulum that used to swing the way it did because of COVID and hurricanes. It's just not as consistent as it used to be. And so I'm like, look, this is the way it is now. And so it was time. We had to take the resources and go get supplies. And so the cheapest way to do it with the resources we had was to go to a big box store. Now, for a long time prior to COVID and prior to hurricanes, I was not using plastic bags. We had really tooled our life. I mean, we were recycling more. We were going to drop our stuff off. We were in a sync where we're going, okay, we're doing our part. I was out picking up trash on the weekends. I was okay. If I keep tuning the dial this way, I'm getting more in alignment with the kind of life I've envisioned for myself. And I felt like it was a part of my spiritual life and God and the whole big picture somehow, even though it's just picking up trash on the side of the road. But the other day, I was like, I didn't have my bags with me, my recyclable, my reusable bags. Had to use plastic bags. And it was sad. I got home, I was driving home, had all these plastic bags. And as I was hauling them from my truck into the house, I was just thinking, I was looking around all the hurricane damage. I mean, excuse me, but there's just shit everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just everywhere, man.
Yeah.
And I was like, how long will it be before... because if I were today, I thought I got these bags. I mean, there's a gosh darn piece of a plastic bathtub sitting on the side of the road, and a refrigerator, and TVs, and old bicycles, and just junk. And I'm like, what does this little me doing this do?
Right.
And so I almost sunk into despair a little bit. I mean, just for a moment between walking back and forth. And then it hit me. I was like, yeah, but Oran, remember, it was like a mantra. It was like, we start with the fork to get to the plate. We get to the plate to get to the bag. We get to the bag to get to the... And I started doing the whole thing. I said, okay, this is why we practice anything.
That's right.
For in these moments. I had to talk myself back up, because I was like, I could see how easy it would be for just that to drop someone into despair to where they just would give up their whole, like, not only their practices, but then their religion too. Just like one step at a time, it eats backwards the other way to where you're going, well, why does any of it matter, you know?
It's got to, nihilism is is a constant fear of mine. I fall into this thought, but I think also is grace in all things, you know, in all things, in all shortcomings. To think, I know just raising my kids that I am damaging them in new and novel ways, and they will have, they may not have the same, father wounds or whatever that I had, but I'm giving them something. I'm trying not to, but at the same time, I don't think my dad or his dad or their dad on up ever tried to, I think they did the best they could with what they knew at the time. And I think that's the grace in all things. So we have, my kids love to eat fast food. Who taught them that? I don't know. All the sugar and the tasty stuff that you get in the fast food. Did some big conglomerate just get together and decide, oh man, we're gonna get these kids all fat? No, they found a product people like to buy. The way it worked, it just happened this way, and so they did the best they could to maximize profits or whatever. So we have also grace in all things, grace in that also, because they're doing the best they could. But we have to step back and be mindful of what we're doing, and at the same time, infuse the Spirit in all things. This grace doesn't just come. I mean, like, somebody offends you, somebody steps out, your first reaction is, it's okay. I don't turn the other cheek. I mean, we're a Christian nation and we kill people for killing people, right? We don't turn the other cheek. We are retributive in everything, and it seems, right? Mm-hmm. And we are trying, I guess what I'm trying to say is we're trying to step towards some more restorative practices, and that has to involve grace in all things, and forgiveness for not for using plastic, or for forgiveness for eating this unsustainable way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's hard to take that approach when we have a mission, when we're mission minded. Mm-hmm. But it's true. As I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking about, like, I used to love to watch outdoor shows, like survival shows, where they show tips and tricks, and several times they will, like, be trapped on an island and go, well, or in the forest, and say, I don't have a way to get water, right now. There's water, but I can't collect it. I don't have a container. And if I have a container, I still don't have a way to boil it until I get fire. But then sometimes in these shows, they'll find, like, an old tin can and go, oh, just this piece of human garbage. Now I can collect water and boil it. Yeah. And it saves their life. For them, I mean, I'm comparing that to, like, the grace to someone who's on a mission to end waste and litter. And I mean, hallelujah. I mean, yes. But in that moment, to that person, a piece of waste and litter is their salvation. And that's the hard thing for us to accept, that, like, sometimes these things that through our mission-minded lens is hurting us or hurting someone else, to someone else in that moment, it's actually doing a greater good. And it's hard for us to accept with big blankets, laws that are just supposed to go, hey, this is the way it is, and it needs to be played for everybody.
Right.
It's so difficult. Grace is, I thought about this on this country road reflection the other day, and I was like, this thing that's been with me all these years is not fixed. It's been moving around and morphing with my life and changing the whole time. It's in a dance. As I change and shift, yes, by its influence, but it's allowed me to change and go through things, and it's still dancing and morphing around my life. I mean, it's not saying I'm going to force you to be something, right. But yet it's present and loving and still dancing around, and it has an influence. But I've, as a human being, I think we have these timetables. You bringing that up about deep time. We have these timetables, and we want things to be in our lifetime, or we want to see the result. I want to plant a seed and eat the fruit.
Right.
And we're losing that, I think, as human beings. We want things so quick, but that used to we weren't like this always. I mean, we did allow things to grow and watch them, take the time. When we read, my son and I are fascinated by the old Farmer's Almanac. We buy them every year, and we'll sit and read through them. And he's like,
"Me too." That's funny, man.
Hey, do you really?
I get one. I didn't get one this Christmas, but my mom buys me Farmer's Almanac like every year, and it's something to read. Yeah. That's interesting. Anyway,
it's fun because okay, there you go. To me, it's a great spiritual tool because even if just reading the Farmer's Almanac, even if you never plant anything,
right.
you get a glimpse into another completely different way of life that is so in tune with frosts and moons and everything. I mean, when to plant, when to sow, when to reap. And I'm like, I read it and I'm fascinated. I'm like, we don't live like this.
Yeah. We live in such a strange way. I mean, we are so disconnected from our food, just completely disconnected. Like I'm not sure my 5-year-old really understands chicken. We went to my aunt's house in Kentucky over this past summer, and she had chickens, and so we got to go get the eggs from the chickens, and she loved it. She wants to get some chickens. But she also loves chicken nuggets, and I think it took her a minute to put together that bird is what you ate, even though it doesn't look the same. We never. I mean, you never watch. Most people don't watch their food be killed or so they could eat, or the time it takes to grow, these 20 tomatoes I bought for $3 grown in Peru or whatever. Yeah, I mean it's just the disconnect is, and so the Farmer's Almanac is awesome, man.
I advise people to get one just to read it, even if you're not planting or growing, just to remind yourself that there's something else going on, out there. It's a peek into. Yeah. I'm even surprised. I mean, and this is such a simple thing, but we're friends on social media. I mean, I love the sunrise. I love going up and watching it rise,
and I love to watch it set, which I think is so.
A lot
funny,
of people
man.
do like that. Yeah, my wife loves the sunset.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting is when I visit with people sometimes I'll go, well, when's the last time you watched a sunrise? I'd say more often than not, they can't remember.
Wow.
A lot of people, other than going to work, but what I find is people who are going to work sometimes aren't paying attention. They'll say, I see it every day. I don't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And I realized something when I started kind of putting that together. I was like, wow, we really are just floating through, just one thing to the next, not stopping and going, hey, there's something awe-inspiring and amazing happening that we're either sleeping through or sleepwalking through.
Yeah. That's so true, man. That's the awareness, becoming aware of just everything is a miracle. I mean, the breath that we're taking, the fact we're having a conversation, the fact the words exist, it is all a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just when we go on vacation, I usually wake up and then go to some park, or if we're at the beach, go walk the beach and watch the sunrise. And that's I don't know, the mystery of how we exist just never ceased. How small and how small we are, and the problems we have are very real. We have very real problems and very real issues, but in the light of eternity, I mean, it's I don't know. I really like to think about, we have this model of the Earth orbiting the sun, and the sun kind of just staying right there, but the sun's moving too, right? So we're all just every moment is, the Earth is in a unique place. We're in a unique place. There's never two moments the same, right? I mean, the patterns repeat, but the opportunity to step into grace or to step into transformation is always present, and to wake up.
Yeah, to wake up.
The opportunity to wake up.
Yeah.
And I wake up several times a day, and I go back to sleep.
Me too.
I fall into that to stay awake would be probably too much.
Yeah. Look, I mean, that happens. I try to go for a walk every morning before I go to work. And I chuckle. I've learned to laugh at myself and then go, well, try again tomorrow. That's all I ever say. Just try again tomorrow. Because I mean, yesterday I was all set to go on my morning walk, and I was driving after I dropped my son off. I was driving back to the park, and my phone's just dinging, and I'm like, oh, and it's my work email just going off with like an emergency project had to be done today, and it was just it was like a mind worm. I got to the park and I started walking, and I was like, all I can think about is how everything I had planned today just got completely derailed, and everything I was going to do, I'm going to be behind on because I have this other stuff now in front of me. And by the time I got back to my office, it's just eating at me. I'm not thinking about anything that's important to life at all. I mean, nothing that's beneficial. All I'm thinking about is the ticking of the clock and how fast can I get this done, how frustrated I am. And then it all just like scales down. Like it just got hyper in that moment. And then then it gets bad, because then I open my mouth and start to complain about it. And it's like all that, and then my tongue starts flapping, and I'm complaining to my wife. And yesterday evening when I finally finished everything, I looked back on the day and I said, I just completely smoked out my own day.
Hell yeah, man.
I mean, I did it to myself. I mean, so what? I had a busy day, but I smoked out any sacred and holy out of the day. So by the time I got to the evening, I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to think about, I didn't want to do my evening readings. I didn't want to do any of the stuff that I practice. All I wanted to do was watch TV and then go to bed because I was sick of this day. And I got up this morning and I was looking forward to talking to you, and I thought, try again. Just try again. Because the thing I know that I've seen in me and other people is that if you don't do that, if you don't practice and you don't just go, hey, it's okay to have a bad day, it's okay to smoke yourself out, just remember that tomorrow you just try again. And it's that easy. I think sometimes we can make it so heavy. Like I know I used to have done that in my spiritual practice, going, oh, I missed a day of my reading, or I was on a good track, and then now I'm all screwed up. Or especially when I was in a faith tradition where there were other people practicing things and you're all kind of beholden to each other and there's all this accountability. I was like, I'm letting everybody down. I didn't do the thing. I just had to let that go and go, I'm just a human being, man. I mean,
that's it.
It's just like you said, it's like I got to let that go.
Grace in all things, man.
Yeah.
For me, I keep saying that, but grace for myself is hard to give, man. I can give grace to somebody else. I mean, sometimes I can give grace to somebody else, but to give it to myself is very, it's judgmental, either regretting the past or future tripping on something else, or my mind will go better than less than, or start putting things in categories, this dualistic way of thinking. And I didn't meditate this morning, and I don't think yesterday I did either. And the day is better if I dedicate myself to stopping this monkey mind from running.
Yeah,
my day is better. And some days I've done that, and the day has been terrible.
Yeah,
right. I have not held fidelity to this love that has accessed my heart. I have given in to my own. I got my own way.
I love what you just said there, man. I'm going to remember that.
I'm sure
the fidelity to the love that has accessed my heart. That's beautiful.
That's a Jim Finley thing.
That's beautiful, man.
The words he says, man. He's God, I just love that man.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have. I keep saying we wake up, and then we wake up and we keep waking up, and it's just a deeper place we get to. Presence of mind and presence of compassion for ourselves and for others doesn't I don't know if it just sneaks up on you, or if it's an act that you have to, not that you work for, but you have to let go into. You have to release into this place where you can find grace in all things. And I feel so privileged. I mean, it's an honor to talk to you, man. I just,
dude, same here.
We have such a the stories are not the same, but they're the same,
Isn't that the way it is, though? I mean, that's that thing that was, like I said, to me, it's like that thing that's dancing around our lives. It's different but the same. I mean, it's a wisp. I can't touch it. I can't grab it in my hand. My son and I were talking about this the other day. It was windy outside, and it felt good. And we just got out of the car, and we just got home from school, and we put our arms out, and we let the cool air. He's like, "Oh, that feels so good." I was like, "Isn't it cool that you can feel that, but you can't see it?" And he was like, "Yeah, I mean, I can see. Well, no, yeah, I can see the flags moving, but I can't see the thing moving them." I was like, right. That's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Like, right. You can't grab it. You can't say, "Here's some wind," and hand it to me. But you can still feel it, and somewhere in that mystery is what we're talking about to me.
That's it. Yeah. I think so.
It's elusive but present, out of sight but as close as our skin,
Yeah, that's I don't know if Meister Eckhart, but God is closer to us than we are to ourselves. This our being is God's being. Not that I am God, but that God is in me and is in you.
I remember, man. I was probably about 25, 26 years old. It wasn't too many years after that sort of awakening experience. I remember I was watching Empire Strikes Back, and I felt like I was watching it again with a whole new set of eyes. I remember when Yoda was talking to Luke, the whole scene where he's lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp. And as a child, that was little when that stuff came out. I hadn't really ever sat with it again. And I remember just being so enthralled by everything he was saying. I was like, oh my gosh, how did I miss this as a child? I thought, oh, that's cool, he's using the Force. I didn't really actually listen to what Yoda was saying, but I honestly felt like I was hearing a great homily, about the nature of the Tao or God or something. I was like, whatever he's saying. And then there's just some people that are like, well, yeah, obviously. But for me, it was a big moment because I had never put spiritual eyes or religious eyes or anything on it before. I thought I'd put the eyes of a child watching science fiction. That was all it ever was. But to actually go back and go, oh, there's actually something really beautiful in there, that it's around us and binds us to each other, to this reality, this tangible, my desk and all, and you, and that thing is connecting you and I right now. I mean, we have technology, but at the same time, there's that third, there's a third one there, an other. Yeah. I love that. I love that because it is deeply simple. And it's mystical. I don't know. It's mystical. It refuses to be, it resists our containers. I mean, it arises in containers, but something a priest told me one time, and you'll probably like this. And he told me one time he was giving us a tour of the inside of a particular Catholic church, and he was explaining the names of each section, like the narthex, and then, the bark of Peter, and why it was called that. And he was saying why there are stained glass windows, And I didn't know this until he told us that. And he said, well, the reason we have stained glass windows is to keep your focus on the inside and what's not going on the outside, like all the beauty inside. And I was like, I didn't know that. I was like, I thought stained windows were just there to be pretty, but they were actually there to keep you from looking out the windows, but to let the light in. And I was like, well, that's an interesting concept. And I thought it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
But then I went for a walk in the prayer garden next to the church, and the light shined through the trees, and the leaves turned red, and the light hit the water, and there were just reflections everywhere, and a spider web glistened. And I thought, it's interesting that that's all designed in well and good that it is that you have a place where you can go inside, but yet there's something even more glorious that it's telling me to ignore outside the windows.
Yeah, that's very, very Franciscan. That sounds like Saint Francis. A lot of people. I mean, I grew up with this. The Bible was the sole word of God. But to think that God didn't start speaking, at creation, or that creation is the first Bible. Like we said, I found God in nature in middle school. I was able to find something beyond myself, greater than myself. It's very interesting, the story about the stained glass. I always thought it was because people were not literate, and so they had to tell these stories in
might
picture
be.
form.
He might have just been telling us that. It might be one hot take on it,
Might be both, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah.
That's it's so crazy. There was something else that I should have wrote this down, man. I'm telling you, God. It's one of these episodes. Right now I'm driving for Grubhub or DoorDash.
Oh, right on, man.
It's for last year. I've been gig worker,
gig economy,
while I'm going back to McNeese, and so I do a lot of riding around. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and so what was the golly? Oh, it's something about this. Jose Ruiz, you had him on there?
Oh, yeah, sure did, yeah.
And this episode, man, I don't know if it's because me and him have similar difficulties, but some of the stuff he said, man, was just like, what was the question? Oh, I wanted to know what all was in your medicine bag. And your children, and your children's teeth. Why are all your children's teeth in this medicine bag?
I keep them, and this is just personal for me. I have my medicine bag on me, actually. I tie it to my belt every day. And, you should see the looks I get, walking around with that on. But I've gotten used to that. I think more of anything, it's a conversation starter. It's an opportunity a lot of times. If someone were to ask me what's in it and I said my children's teeth, what I would tell them, I said, when I hold the medicine bag, or if I ever feel disconnected from my history or my tribe, or if I'm feeling like I haven't been a good father or I've let someone down, all I have to do is hold that, and it reminds me that all these children's teeth are in here, and they're all living. Luckily, nothing bad they've all survived, for one, under my care, for whatever that means. But it just reminds me that I've cared for them, and that is a good thing, to be a caregiver to my children. And then it makes me think of those moments, honestly, of how they've turned from a little child and they've moved into a new stage in their life, and that transformation from a child to an adolescent or an adult. And so, to have that. In fact, it's interesting. I just put another one in there the other day, and I usually, before I put an item in, I'll leave it in a bowl next to my nightstand, so I'll see it for a few days and just kind of think on it, whatever it may be. I used to not do that, but now I do, just kind of spend some time with it before it's archived, so to speak, in the bag. Yes. But it's like a walk through my life almost, like these moments, because those things like the teeth are, like, I'll give you an example. I really hadn't told anybody this, but I found a recording of my oldest son the other day, a voice recording. It was a conversation we'd had when he was, in the 5th grade. It was untitled, so I was playing it, trying to determine what this audio file was, and as I realized through context, I was like, oh my gosh, that's my son. And I just sat with his little voice that doesn't exist anymore. He's got a deep, deep man's voice now. And I wouldn't have recognized it, and it made me sad. I was like, my memory can't recall his voice. Like, I can't. I've had too many years with him with this other voice now, and it's like I can't remember it. Now, if I think of my father, I can hear my father's voice. I can hear my father-in-law's voice. But for my son, I couldn't, and it made me sad, I guess. And so in a way, the medicine bag acts like that. It's like a node to convalesce moments,
okay. Yeah.
So I hope that it helps me to remember, their faces when they're that age. I know we have pictures and things like that, but carrying it on my person, it's like a relic.
Yeah. I love it, man. I think it's awesome. just awesome thing. My daughter, my 5-year-old, just lost her two first teeth. They've been loose, and they just lost them, and I'm just like, we're doing the tooth fairy thing, and I'm just like, if you keep the teeth and then they find the teeth, what happens? So anyway, that's just
Man, you just made me think of something. Bringing Don Jose up. And I've been thinking about this lately, and I want to get your take on this. Because I've been thinking about... Well, I'll tell you, like this other day, I made a post about something negative, on the internet. And I try not to, but I do. Sometimes I think, hey, this is important, we should see it. And someone kind of, I don't want to say they came at me, but they just kind of were educating me on my negative take and how I should perhaps offer more love and understanding instead of the negativity. And it just hit me like, I immediately thought of Jesus and his cycle, and the way it formed for me was like almost like a shamanic type journey. I was like, well, I put like made a medicine wheel like in my mind of his cycle. I was like, well, sure, we have this human being who's in the world, but then he's willing to experience the worst suffering. And then beyond that, the next part of the cycle is dying and going into the underworld, which is darker than anything we can imagine. But the journey doesn't stop in the underworld. He comes back up into new life. And then beyond that is, in whatever you want to call ascension, this rejoining of sorts with the source. I'm just going to say it like that. In my mind, that's the way I made the wheel. And I thought that's a useful tool for me in my life, because sometimes I'm on different points within this wheel, and I might travel this wheel many, many, many times. Mm-hmm. Don Jose kind of talked about that in his journey too. He said the shaman, and he even said, someone calls me a shaman, whatever. He threw it away like that's somebody else's word for me. I don't sit around and call myself that. But he brought up that, the shaman goes to the underworld and comes back with new knowledge to share with the world. It's a cycle that the shaman may make over and over again. And it just got me kind of drawing some correlations between those two things, like almost just looking at Christ through a shamanic wheel. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I started to feel like I was getting something out of that, like something I could use as a roadmap to some degree, like looking at a life situation and going, okay, where on Christ's shamanic wheel does this fall? Is this feasting with friends? Is this being a healer? Is this being sorrowful and weeping? Am I on the wheel where I'm looking to God and going, why have you forsaken me? Am I in a despair? Am I in the underworld? I don't know. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. That's very, very interesting. I just think there's I'm not so familiar with this wheel.
Well, me either. Me either.
There was some icons of Jesus coming up out of the grave from hell, rescuing, but he brings all the saints with him, right?
Yeah, right.
He's
opens the doors or unlocks the prisoners. Yeah,
and that's I just had that mental image while you were speaking of that.
Yeah. Well, you can't free people if you don't go to them. And like, where are people, right? So to speak, like, where are they? Yeah. And so you can't, and I don't know, just to me, I was thinking about this. I wasn't offended, but I felt like it was maybe, I guess I had to try to put it into perspective. Like, yeah, sometimes you have to go into the underworld.
I think
you know
that's
what I mean?
True.
To get to the gate, to the lock.
Yeah, I don't think that. I don't know. I've been seeing this hashtag for toxic positivity.
Yeah,
I think that's sometimes kind of related. Like if you're unable to acknowledge the grief and the loss and the death and the despair, then if you just just kind of try to just skip over that part, you're not there's no redemption. There's no third way. There's no way out without.
Like I'm going to bypass this. Like that's almost like what I kept telling myself and like visualizing it as a wheel. I was like, yeah, if I'm on the wheel, I don't get to bypass this. I mean, like I can go, oh, well, okay, I'm cool to like, I'm cool to say the prayers, and I'm cool to hang out with my friends in the community, and I'm cool to break bread, and I'm cool to, you know, maybe split some fish and loaves with a bunch of folks and even heal a few people. Wait a second. I gotta hurt a little bit. I gotta suffer a little bit. Oh, wait, it's going to get tough. Well, I'm going to give up right here, you know?
Yeah, it's both death and resurrection. It's not just the resurrection. It's that thing before, or the death, the suffering.
There's something there. There's like something in that pattern that is relevant to. I mean, I even think of that kind of like from a Buddhist perspective. Like I was kind of lingering, and I went, so okay, you look at the wheel of the Dharma, and then you say, well, life is suffering. But there's a path that leads to the end of suffering. So it's not just life is suffering, stop there, the end. It's you're moving through, you know, it's, yes, this is real. There's old age, sickness, and death.
Yeah.
But there's a path, and it leads to, you know, something else, something free of that. And so I kind of, I don't know, I'm just seeing some similarities there in that cyclical thinking. Something I want to meditate on a little more, actually, to be honest. I'm just curious what if you had any thoughts about that, honestly. It was kind of a new way of looking at it for me.
Well, I think that's the universal pattern, and you can't skip over death into life. The suffering, I mean, that's where my transformation came from. But I wish I came through somebody loved me so much that I never had to suffer.
Right.
I never had to, go through what the suffering that I self-imposed or otherwise, you know. Sometimes when we think about Christianity as what we're waiting on our escape pod to heaven, you know, we just need to put up with this life and whatever is handed to us. So, you know, at least when we die, it'll be okay. You know, and that I'm sure that's still a common thought, but that also allows for oppression of people and put suffering onto others. Like, well, that's just your hand you were dealt. You know, you're gonna have to. You know, when you die, there'll be transformation. But in this life, on this side, you know, you're gonna have to just deal with it. You know, and pray to God to give you the strength to deal with this unsufferable injustice that I think is really what we're here to overcome and to transform.
Yeah, restorative justice to some degree. I mean, it's exactly right. I've thought those same thoughts, you know, that's something that disenchanted me with the religion necessarily. Not all of it, but the portions of it that were really about, like you said, an escape pod. I was like, you know, we're looking at this world and this life like something that we just have to drudge through. You know, not looking upon it as God's creation or a glory and a wonder. Something to be appreciated and loved. We're looking at it as a middle ground. It's like, well, we're just going to use this up. It's okay. Because there's another layer to reality, and we're going to all be there and have all our stuff. And that just really doesn't sit for me. And it may sit. It just doesn't work for me to look at it that way.
I had something else on social media I posted, and the same kind of thing. Or I replied to my former youth minister, and then somebody else came back and said, "Oh, that's some cafeteria Christianity. Yes, I'm going to take what works for me, and I'm going to leave the rest because that's what works for me." And so. Sure, there are charlatans in every faith tradition. There is spiritual gurus that will sell you their plan for enlightenment, and you can buy that. But you could find some good stuff in all of it. And yes, some of it is untenable and it doesn't work. But at the same time, there's some good. So I don't know. That's probably
No, I get what you're saying. I actually was one of the things I had wrote down to even ask you, and you really just kind of answered that question. I mean, it was one is about how do you deal with it as a Christian when you hit a scripture wall. And what I mean by that is when you hit a piece of scripture that you go, okay, this is in the quote Word of God, and it's meant to be seen that way by many, many Christians. I mean, a lot see it that way, right. And say, okay, but this piece of scripture actually segregates, degenerates, isolates, and harms.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you meet that piece of scripture, you know?
Well, here I'm going to go back to Richard Rohr. He's got a tricycle that starts with experience as the front wheel, and then tradition and scripture are the back wheels, right? And tradition, you know, in the Catholic Church or the way things have been,
right?
And scripture, there's really what's the word? Hermeneutic, the lens that you use to read the Bible and interpret what it says a lot about, you know, is it literal? Is it allegory? Is it more? Is there more being said? Who wrote these books? Who were they wrote for? Did they mean to write it to me here in 2021? Am I their intended audience, or were they writing to a church? Was Paul or somebody like Paul, and we gave Paul the credit for writing this book? The troublesome books, I guess, are like First Timothy and the ones that speak out against women in the church or LGBTQ. For me, I mean, these are the issues. But I have a problem. I forget if it's in Matthew where Jesus is talking to the lady, and it's like, why would I give the food meant for the kid to the dogs or whatever, you know?
Right.
And he basically compares, you know, and it's Jesus talking.
Yeah.
I have to sit with that one. I mean, that's that's not.
Yeah.
That's not the Jesus that appears in almost every other,
right.
know,
where does that come from? This change of character and tone, like all of a sudden, that one's been tough for me too.
So I don't know, and to realize that the Bible was written not Genesis to Revelation, like chronologically. You know, the Gospels were written after most of those Paul letters, and so the words of Christ were written after the words of Paul. Yeah, you know, that's not to say they had oral traditions and they had better. They were closer to the source at the time. So, the Bible, man, it's how we just had on Sunday. We read 1 Samuel, the story of Samuel and Eli, where God is calling Samuel. And he gets up and goes to see Eli and is like, what do you want? He's like, I'm not calling you, I'm sleeping. So he goes back and calls him again. And he's like, it's not me. So next time just tell God your servant is listening. And then what God has to say is that, okay, Eli and his sons are blasphemers and I'm never forgiving them ever. Is what it says. That's what 1 Samuel says, is that God says that Samuel's going to become the priest, and Eli and his sons are blasphemed and will never be forgiven for what they've done. And what? That doesn't sync with. I don't like it.
Right?
Know?
Yeah, I hear you. Right.
I don't like it.
That's a good way to say it. I don't like it.
Yeah. And so Jesus, at the same time, you know, when he heals these people and they come and ask him why did he have this affliction? Was it the son? Was it the sins of the father that caused the son to have this affliction? And Jesus is like, no.
Right.
So
that right there dispels generational curses. I mean, like that should be done with it right there, because that's all people seem to talk about. I hear so much of that now.
But it's true. I mean, the part about generational, I'm not saying that the person is doomed.
Right, but the way that it's outlined there, it's not like some sticky demonic cloud that's sort of stuck on a family, you know, like, his dad did something bad, therefore he's punished. But at the same time,
I mean, I'm a product of several generational traumas that, you know, my addictions are not, you know, they didn't spring out of my parents, my grandparents. There's a lineage of this. That I wish I broke.
That's
but
where
I didn't break it.
The language of Buddhism for me, and this is what I guess this is where I would flex or pivot, because I would pivot into a whole and maybe, and I know there's people that just go, well, you can't do that, and I'm like, oh yeah, well I do. I don't know what else to do. I just do it that way because that's where karma. And looking at karma, to me, begins to really start to play. And some people, this is a really bad misunderstanding with just common folks that hear the word and use it, but they'll say karma like it's almost like a curse. Like, oh, you did something bad, you're going to get punished. And the way I understand it and the way it's been taught to me was that it's really just more cause and effect. I mean, you're living in, what you just described there is you're living in the karma of your ancestors. You're like alcoholism or alcohol or addiction or whatever. That's really, it's your karma, but it comes from their karma. Right. And you can be the karma breaker right there and say, oh, okay, now I can change my karma by doing something new. And that way my negative karma doesn't become my kids' karma that they then live. Like I know for sure the trauma some of my trauma mentally comes from my father's actions, but I know now from doing research that that's also comes from my grandmother and other people that did things to him. So it's a karmic chain of cause and effect. I have a choice now to say, okay, can I transform that karma? And I mean, I'm talking about like real world, not future lives, reincarnation, like really literally, can I not pass that negative karma on? Can I transmute that for my children? Yeah, the word curse has always bothered me because it makes it almost like it's been cast upon you. And that piece of scripture, that right there that you mentioned, it's like, oh, Christ did a good thing by saying it's like, hey, he isn't sick because daddy did something bad. It's like this, he's just sick.
Right.
Don't be like going like it's punishment, or that God's like going, oh, you've got this black thread now through your life that you can't shake because it's been attached to you for wrong deeds or something. I don't know. And that's just my hot take on it, whatever it's worth.
No, I think that's good. I mean, I think that's the if you look at how Jesus read the Bible, I mean, the passages he brought up,
right.
Anytime Jesus brings up a passage, it's not, it's a hope-filled, spirit-filled kind of thing. It's never some retributive. Cause I mean, honestly, the God in the Old Testament is quite an asshole. I mean, he just smites. I mean, he just kills people, women, children. And yes, okay. So the cognitive dissonance that I was experienced was, we would have that God, and then we would have this New Testament God that was love. God is love. As First John is just telling us how much God is love, but he's willing to smite a couple thousand people who didn't do. I could never put that together. I mean that's a mystery, and there's no reason to. The view could be that the people who wrote the book were writing from their perspective, and they weren't God writing from. Anyway, to think that God causes trauma and my at the beginning of this in last March, my brother-in-law died in a motorcycle accident, and to think that God, took his life because for whatever reason is less than helpful and not true. I mean, that's and to think people get cancer and people contracting COVID and die is somehow God's will is I think toxic. I think that's the view of God is untenable.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you can. That's right. That's where like an personal or a spiritual alchemy, a perspective like that's so helpful. I mean, in Christ, to me, is a very great icon and symbol of that. It's yes, these things happen. This is not a punishment. They haven't been cast upon you. They happen, and they're sorrowful, and they pain us. They pain us because we love. I mean, usually that's why we hurt when we lose somebody.
Yeah.
or there's a great loss. But we can choose to alchemize it, and that's on us to alchemize it. The gift is there, we just have to be willing to be a part of that. And that is, that might be the blessing on the other side of a tragedy. But to say that the tragedy itself, that's something like it's an enabling thing. And I've seen a lot of people talk about that, where I've heard people say, well, what I do is I offer it up. Because I've heard people tell battered wives that, well, you know what? Divorce is bad, but you just need to offer it up. I'm like, okay, this is where we're getting into this abuse enabler situation. We're using religion to enable and protect abusers. I am not for that kind of. And this is something that killed me, and it's probably one of the reasons I finally just left the Catholic Church, and more so just the overall, I guess, denominator as calling myself just a Christian. And it was whenever I heard someone say, well, there was this priest, he had been abusing children, and they said, what about all the masses he served and all the communion he served, while all these years when he was using those same hands, to touch and abuse children. And I heard someone say, well, that is evil what he did, but his hands were ordained, so the communion was still blessed and good. I had a problem with that. I mean, I was like, this is getting into some strange territory here for me. We're talking, and to me, it's sort of get into, like, I hate to say it, but like spells and wizardry almost. Like, well, because the spell has been placed over the hands. And I mean, that's a blessing or an ordination, but you could replace the word. The enchantment has been placed on this object, these hands. And so the being themselves can do whatever they want with their body and do all these other things. But when they do this act, because the hands have the enchantment, the magic still happens and the transformation takes place. I had problems with that. I mean, it didn't make me angry or anything like that. I just thought there's a perspective here that I just can't subscribe to anymore.
Yeah, there's rituals in the church that are a communion for me. We grew up Southern Baptist, so we did it. I don't know, once every. Once every
little
3 months or something, you got
yeah.
a little Jesus cup. But right now, that's how we're doing it. We got these Jesus to go cups. You got a little wafer on top of.
Oh, really?
Anyway,
Okay.
Anyway, but there's something. I'm gonna use the word magical. It's magical in this thing for me. This ritual for me. And I didn't grow up. It wasn't like very important to me. We did it like 4 times a year. It was a little tasteless. But it's some physical embodiment of Christ. I don't know that. So, but I can do that myself.
Right.
I can take the time to make sacred bread,
Right.
to take whatever I'm eating, and maybe that's what I should be doing. Since he said, each time you eat this, remember me. Maybe I should be doing that every meal. 3 times a day, be infused with the Spirit, and then also maybe a church have some special sacred time. But yeah, we put the ordination this anyway.
I get it.
I feel like I'm going to get negative, and I don't.
I know. Yeah, I probably took us to a bad place with that. But
okay.
I guess my point in bringing that up was I'm an advocate of. It was leading back to something when we were talking about scripture. I have been told that I cherry pick, and I'm like, my answer to that is yes. That's right. I do.
Yes.
And you're our cafeteria, whatever. I go, well, you can't call me a cafeteria. I quit using the identifier for any religion, even though I'm highly influenced by religion, and even though I really do have a deep love and relationship with Jesus. I have found that by taking the title off, no one accuses me of cherry picking anymore.
That's good. That's better. When people ask what you believe, they're just trying to put you in a box.
Yeah.
Is the
or
thing.
frame you up and understand.
I it's hard to say, but I go to a Methodist church, but I'm so beyond the walls of what they have, believe, right? I mean, my personal experience is not encapsulated in this denomination, in this religion. So I struggle too sometimes. Like, why do we go to church? Why all these mainline denominations are losing members? And the reason why we started going to church, my wife was going to church. She didn't go in New York too much, but we started really going after my son. He was playing these Lego Indiana Jones, Lego Star Wars. He knew all the characters. I don't know if you play these on the Wii, but there's every character in the game, in the movies, is in the game. And he knew Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda and on and on and on. He knows all the characters. He had no idea who Moses was. He didn't know Jonah and the whale. He didn't know all these things that I grew up knowing because we went to Sunday school. And he's 5 or 6, and he doesn't have a clue about any of these Daniel and the lions. These stories are powerful. And they're not powerful for the literalism in them. They're powerful for the message that they convey. This transformative, spirit-infused thing. Anyway, so we started going to church for that, and then the other reason I said before, but I don't think that we can box God in such a way. I think that we come together for a community of people seeking and trying to be Christ-like. And so to define me as, Methodist Christian, I think is, comes with too many connotations, and the better way to say is I'm a follower of Christ who is just open, trying to find and be love and light in the world.
Yeah.
At least that's what I aspire to be. I was thinking, you're talking about raising kids, and I want to give my kids the opportunity to explore and find their own way too. I don't want to start giving them answers to questions they haven't even asked yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the problem we've had, or I had, was this is this is that, this is the other. I hadn't even quite got there. And so when I started asking those questions, I wasn't able to fill it out for myself. It was like, well, here's the answer. Here's the answer.
Right. It's kind of like I've always said this, and I probably never said it on a podcast before, but my wife hears me say it all the time. I said, I'm really more interested in where the roly-polies play. And what I mean by that is, when I was a child, I would go out in my grandmother's garden, and she would have these big rocks lining her bed, but I'd always get my hands in there and turn those big rocks over, and the roly-polies were under there, and I loved it.
Yeah.
But if I were walking through the yard and I said, hey, what's that? Someone else may just go, that's a rock, and keep on walking. I would rather have the mind to look under the rock, It's like, okay, cool, rock. Instead of just walking by, I'd rather find out, where the roly-polies play. I mean, what's going on underneath this thing? I mean, even a piece of scripture, scratching at it for a little while, and saying, hang on, not only is there some historical context I need to understand, but, also what's Spirit saying here? And I probably need to quit beating this scripture thing to death, but I was just the other day. The story of Jonah. I was talking about it with my son, and he was saying, "Man, I just have a hard time with this story. I mean, the whole thing, the details of it." And I said, it's interesting. I said, because on the surface, hot take, I can look at the story of Jonah and I see, hey, sometimes in life, you may witness something that moves your heart so much. God moves on your heart, and you go, someone should do something about that. Someone should step forward and be the comforter, the healer, the guardian, whatever that is. Somebody needs to do that. And then in the back of your mind, there's a nudge that says, yeah, well, it's not somebody else, it's you. But then you just go, I don't know, not me, I'm going to wait. And then a little time passes, and then you look back and you're like, man, nobody's doing anything that's nagging you. And then you step forward, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I actually have the capacity to do this. I point my talents towards it. I'm solving this thing, whatever it may be. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe it's child hunger. Maybe it's just helping people tarp roofs. I don't know, delivering meals, but it's moving you. That's a quick hot take on the story of Jonah, right? I mean, without adding a bunch of extra stuff.
Yeah.
But someone else can read that same story and go, this election was a fraud. Nobody's listening. You need to pack up and go to Washington. And yeah, it's going to be scary, but God's calling you to do that, to bust in that Capitol. You see what I'm saying? Like, I go,
yeah, man.
Two people can read that same thing and get two completely different missions out of it. And that's why I have to have that rule of first do no like harm. Like, I have to have that, because if we don't have rules like that, we end up in that place where we're busting in doors and loading guns and,
Yeah, I love the story, Jonah. I mean, I love that you brought that up. Even as I felt like Jonah. I don't know how many times in my life where God calls you to do something over here, and you're like, oh hell no,
I don't want to do that.
I ain't doing that. And I really love this story because it's like the shortest one, and it ends in a question. It just stops. The story just stops. I had to look it up while you were looking, but so Jonah goes on the boat, gets thrown in the water, the fish eats him. 3 days later, which is what Jesus says, the only sign you'll have is the sign of Jonah,
right?
Which is probably why it's in the Bible. I mean, this story is so out there. Like, why is Jonah even in the Bible? Except Jesus said that, so we got tied in.
Got to put it in there, make it make sense, right?
But anyway, so he finally goes and does the thing that God wanted him to do, was tell Nineveh to repent and to change their ways. And then they did it. And then God didn't kill him, and he got pissed. Jonah got pissed that God didn't do anything to him, that they followed what he said, and they listened to him. And he's like, God, why you didn't just, take out this town that you
after all this stuff, I walked all the way through this gosh darn place, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and it is. Let's see. I want to read it. And the Lord said, "You had compassion on the." He sat underneath a plant at the end, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then God withered the plant away.
Yeah, took it away.
He got the sun. Yeah, he got stuck in the sun, and the book ends. Then the Lord said, "You had compassion on the plant for which you did not work and which you did not cause to grow, and it came up overnight and it perished overnight. And should I not have concern for the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people, and who cannot tell their right hand from their left hand, and also so many animals?" And that's what it is.
That's right. Stops. That's it. The end. Right. Yeah. I mean, and you're right. It does leave you with a question. It's like, should I not? I mean, it's like God justifying to humanity. Something earlier we were talking about. I mean, and I found this with the Old Testament or the vengeful God. How often those things look very much that God hates who we hate.
Yeah, he looks just like us.
Looks just like us. It has the same pettiness, has the same need for revenge and retribution. I mean, all the same stuff. So it's interesting, and then Jesus comes in and kind of confounds all of that. I've always I always feel like just an internal sort of sting when I would be listening to a sermon or a homily where someone would and there's many people who love to do this, say, Jesus didn't come to eradicate the Old Testament. He came to, and they'll call that scripture for where he's like, I came to fulfill the law, and they use that as like a justification for any horrible atrocity that maybe came through the law. And I've seen that happen a lot of times, and it always stings me. I'm like, oh, you're just trying to find a bridge to your own very human biases.
Yeah.
Through a particular language in the New Testament or in the Gospel. And so, yeah, it kind of stings for me. I don't know. But again, we're all out here just trying to find our way, man.
That's it, man. And I think, and we make it, what's that saying? We make the way by walking, I mean, that's how we, I think the biggest takeaway from the difference between the way I viewed God before I found the God of my understanding and afterwards was that he didn't look so much like me. He looked like this thing I was called to be. This thing I was.
I love that.
This thing I was aspiring. I'm reaching for. I'm becoming, and not something I can fit into this box. To think that the original sin is this generational curse we talk about, that because Adam and Eve, we all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That's true. We've all sinned. We've all fallen short. We've done things we wish we wouldn't have done. We've hurt people in ways we wish we didn't, or maybe we wish we did. I don't know. Sometimes we why evil exists in this world. That's another question. Why can the just God allow such evil? But to think that this original sin was the way it is, and we just come out sinful, is harmful. To not view life as a blessing, and original blessing, and this earth as a blessing, and not some kind of thing that we have to struggle, walk on our knees to redeem. It's
interesting. Listening to you makes me think of something my son and I were talking about I'd read a few times in the Rig Veda and other commentary about it, that the gods in these realms live in these realms of bliss, and they want to come here where we're at, because this is the only realm where you can learn compassion. In their realms with no suffering and all bliss, you can't actually learn to love and to be helpful and all these other gifts. And I thought that's an interesting perspective to think on, that the realm we live in, that we disdain so much, that we say is filled with pain and sorrow and suffering, is actually the realm that the gods wish they could be a part of, because the real gift is to generate love, compassion, mercy. And I was like, that's a fascinating thing to think about.
Yeah.
Because we don't do that. We're like, I can't wait to get to the realm of bliss. I want to be there in bliss and no suffering, but yet even those beings that we, I don't know. It's just a fascinating thing to think about. Flips it on its head,
You said something too. I think that's just learning to love deeper and stronger, and that's what this life is. If we doing it with any kind of integrity, is to expand our hearts. It just ever widening circles. I think that's Rilke has a poem that's in ever widening circles. Anyway, it's beautiful, man.
And I'm happy, I know it.
Hey there, Good News listener. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I've enjoyed producing it. Now, it's time for the Fishing for Goodies segment, where I turn my interviewer role over to the Good News Fish Bowl. Longtime listeners know that the Fish Bowl contains over 400 unique questions, many seeded by you, the listeners. Did you know that you could submit unique questions to the Fish Bowl? That's right. Just call the Good News Hotline at 802-459-1668 to have your question added. You can also visit findthegood.news and send me an email. Now, let's take that dive into the fishbowl. So look, man, you've listened to this podcast. I know you said you have, right?
Oh, yeah. You going to fishbowl me? Let's go.
Got the fishbowl you right here, man.
Well,
I'm going to shake it up.
Bowl. I know. It's a real fishbowl.
It's a real fishbowl, yeah, I know, right? You can actually see it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got full of questions. I'm actually really excited to ask you these questions. So if you've listened, I draw 3. All right, there's 1.
Is that for the triune God? Is that why you draw 3?
I didn't think of that before, but it could be. A trinity of questions.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. All right. Oh, what's the number one way that you show others that you care about them?
I think just physically being alongside them, calling them, or right now I've been going to my mom's not doing so well.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's life. It happens, and I'm learning to adjust. But having physical, which is hard to do, and we tried to stay apart for the first part of COVID. Was like can't quite see you, and you're in that high risk group. So, but going over there and just being present, fully present, not thinking about what I should be doing tomorrow or
right.
what giving. I think that's a better answer. Gift of presence in
I think that's a great gift, man. That's a wonderful thing to give people. In fact, truthfully, I mean, hearing you say that, I mean, that's honestly one of the missions of this show. I mean, I say it's to share the good news, but it's just to create a space where we can be with people and allow things to just come out, like a salve, the drawing salve.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think if we can allow people to be themselves, fully themselves, is also a way to care about them. So many people, they're afraid. I know I'm afraid sometimes to be who I fully, truly am. I have to put on this mask or this shades. I can give you a shade of myself, but I don't want to. It hurts. I think that's part of it. Is it hurts. You expose your heart, it gets hurt, so you just draw it back in and keep it locked up. But the ability to pull it back out again is to be present. To this non-judgmental, way of being is beautiful.
Yeah, that's a wonderful answer and something, honestly, I can take to heart and apply, really. It's good advice for anybody. So this is an interesting, way outside of what we talked about question. Would you ever consider training for a triathlon?
Oh, no chance.
Why in the world? Somebody wanted to know.
Hey, yeah, well, it's really strange and funny. So I have this Instagram page, Blue Collar Mystic.
Yes, I'm glad you brought it up. I wanted to get it.
And somebody tagged me in it. There's another Blue Collar Mystic. He's blue_collar_mystic. And she was tagging him in order to run a marathon. They were going to plan on running some marathon.
Really?
And so I got tagged and I went to the page. I'm like, hey, I know 100% you're not trying to tag me. I'm not running a marathon. Even if somebody's chasing me, I'm not running. There's no marathon going to be run. So anyway, they're very synchronous. They're very, these two people are, I don't know. Just happened about a month ago, I think. And it's been great to watch them and see them. And now that I say all that, I'm like, I don't know if I could really do a triathlon, but I do. My intention this year, anyway, has been to take more care of my body. I know when I was younger, I didn't care if I made it to 35, and now I'm 37, and I'm still under the illusion that I'm never going to die. Even though I see that it's inevitable, but if I don't take care of this thing, that this vehicle for my being, I'm not gonna live forever. I mean, that's not gonna happen anyway. But I have. So I have been doing some exercise and eating better and trying to be more mindful of.
I saw that you're doing some Whole Foods type stuff.
I started a plant-based Whole Foods plant-based diet. That's it's for many reasons, but for my health, for the world. Whole food plant-based diet is the only diet that's been proven to or scientifically shown to reverse heart disease and diabetes. And also I think I'm nonviolent. I try to be nonviolent. Ask my kids, they probably would have a totally different opinion when I explode. But I'm nonviolent in these thoughts and these actions mostly. But when I eat, I've incurred suffering on other things. I love steak. I love hamburgers. So for me to decide I'm going to try, and I'm not even 3 weeks in. So, ask me in 6 months how sustainable this has been. It's been pretty good. I've had it's plant-based, so it's not, straight vegan.
Right.
So I'm trying to be mostly vegan, but we had chicken and sausage gumbo. You can't quite I don't know. I don't think a vegan gumbo exists. It doesn't sound very tasty to me. But anyway,
it's a good answer though. So here's your last question. If you're sitting down to visit with someone, what type of drink do you order?
I got some tea here for this conversation. It's probably, if we're out somewhere, it'd probably be water. Yeah. That's a bland. Nothing wrong with water, man. Yeah, in the past it would have been some alcoholic beverage that would have really loosened my lips.
Oh yeah, I understand. I'm mostly a water guy myself. I drink a little coffee in the morning, and drink water most of the time. But I hear you. Yeah. I like iced tea, but I don't drink it as much as I used to.
Yeah. You know what? That made me think of another question I had for you. You had mentioned social anxiety. Yeah. Before, and I have the same sort of situation, and that's part of what alcohol did for me. Was a lubricant, a social lubricant. I was able to feel like I was more myself.
Right.
I would summon the courage to be that. But when I went to Albuquerque, I just want to share the story with you. When I went to Albuquerque for this living school the first time, I drove 14 hours to Albuquerque, and I had to get out of the car and go in this hotel I've never been to and go register for a symposium. I've never done any symposium or any kind of trade fair, trade show. There's all these people walking around. I almost didn't do it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know any of these people.
Yeah.
And it was a fear. And I drove 14 hours to this thing, and I almost didn't get out of the car.
Yeah,
I mean, it was. I'm glad I did, and I did do it. Finally, I don't know. The courage came to me, but so many times we get to that spot, that part where the fear is the greatest, and we don't. If we don't push through it, we don't experience transformation or the gifts or the blessings or whatever is on the other side of the fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's the overcoming suffering and fear are like the transformation. That's the keys for all transformation happen by overcoming suffering and fear. And so anyway, you brought that up before, and I just thought it was I could.
I'm glad you shared that, man, because I mean, even just sitting on a podcast and sharing and things you share online, I mean, that's an effort to really get over those types of things. I mean, it's not that may be why you're doing it, but the showing other people that we can push through those types of debilitating things. I think it's high value. I mean, I've been there, man. I still go through it. I mean, I won't lie and say there isn't some anxiety before I click connect on some of these calls, I mean, there's always a little bit of a little string of fears, but pushing through is worth it almost every time.
Yeah, man. That's been great.
I got one last question. That's it, man. Did anything good happen today?
And like everyone else, man, this conversation here has been great, man. I really, when you approached me, I didn't know why, what I would have to offer to talk about. So I was, I was just honored that you asked me to even come on here.
Well, I'm glad you agreed, man. I mean, I've been looking forward to this one. I haven't had a local conversation in a while, to be honest with you. It's mostly been COVID kind of redirected the show. And I said, this year I want to make an honest effort to, now I want to have a little more even mix, and I said, I want to talk to people that I really believe truly, like I did in the original mission, that are just doing good works right here at home. And I mean, your name, it just popped in my head. I said, two things. One, I love what you're putting out there. It's so necessary, I think, for us to heal this world. I really believe that. And I mean, that's the first thing I think. And then two, I just wanted to meet you. You're one of those people that we've been in each other's orbits online, and we connect, and you get there's just something different about visiting. And I said, what you said, presence. I was like, I just want to meet you, man. I just wanted us to just jam and have a good time. And I love having talks with, I can't always have an open Christian conversation, truly, fully open. you know, and I felt like I was going to be able to do that with you, and it was honestly healing for me, the truth of the matter.
Oh, well, great. That's awesome, man. That's, you know, I feel like a stalker almost because I listen to the podcast, but I think the first time I really, your sister worked with my wife at Barb Elementary, so I know your niece and nephew.
Oh, okay.
They've been to my house. Anyway, that's so I knew you had posted something somehow Mercy Mornings.
Oh yeah, I used to do that. Yeah,
got on my radar, and it was something at Freon Lake Park at 7 a.m.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was getting off work, and I never was off when it was happening.
Oh,
and that's how I guess found you, and then I found out who you were and how you connected Bethany, all that, and so. It's been I don't know, I feel like almost like a stalker. It's just been like we're on the same wavelength, man. The same seeking on this journey, you know. It's just been anyway.
Well, I thank you, man. It's been a blessing. I really is. I'm like I said, I'm lucky today. I get to have another conversation right after this one, and I honestly am very curious. I've never had two people in the same kind of category that don't live in the same area back to back like this. In fact, she's going to be on in just a minute. And I was like, you know, I'm wondering how our conversation is going to inform what we talk about. Like I might even, I really don't know. I might even launch these as like bookends. You know what I mean? Like it might be really cool to like link them up because, I don't know. It's just a day of blessing for me. This is just going to be a powerful day. Hopefully, I'll be thinking for a lot of days about these conversations.
Yeah, man, me too. And I know roundabout. The other good thing that happened today, I haven't even looked at my phone in a while, but I think like 2 hours ago we had a new president sworn in.
Yeah,
so,
that's right. When we scheduled this, I didn't even think about that. I was like, it occurred to me this morning.
I did, and I thought if anything terrible happens, at least I'll have a kindred spirit to. Oh
yeah, no joke. To ride it out with.
To ride it out with. So, but it looks like it happened. So good.
That's good. Yes, that's right. Historic moment for us today. That's great, man. All right, brother. Thank you so much for your time, really. And I'll see you again later today, I'm sure, online.
yeah, man. For sure, man.
Well, you always have a friend and a brother and ally in me, man. If you ever need anything, you let me know.
Same, man. It's been great.
I'm more thankful every moment that I found.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with James Hiatt. If you found something of use in this conversation, consider visiting findthegood.news/donate, where you can help me continue this good news mission from the Louisiana Gulf Coast. I thank you for pressing play and for seeking out good news.